oh, there's human beings who are dying all over the world because of my actions. It does not compute. I've talked to these people about what's happened. It does not compute to them. And so to them, gutting the DOE and repealing Roe versus Wade, they already have the two largest conservative cultural victories in decades. That's how they feel about Trump. But let's say that Donald Trump isn't a pedophilic trafficker, they'll come up with a way to sweep that out of their mind as well.
If that's the case, and if that's your view of what Republicans are willing to do, why would you reward them by considering such awful people to get your vote?
You said it's lost, quit. And I'm saying, you know.
We're just in a whole different era when it comes to the Republican Party. It's like you are far too limited in your disgust of Republicans, and it's pretty exclusively on Trump. You would forgive a lot of these people. You would forgive DeSantis, and you would forgive JD Vance.
Hey folks, please like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description.
All right, let's call Conor. See what's up with this loser. What up, bro?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, one sec.
Well, just to say, you told me that you were going to take 12 minutes to set up around noon, and
What?
it is.
That's a lie. That's an absolute lie.
When was it?
It was like 20 minutes ago.
You sent me a message at 12:09 p.m. saying, "Hey, if I get my stream up and running, are you up for a call?"
So you admit you lied because you just said, you know what you just said, right? You know you just fucked yourself up, right? You know you just fucked up.
Well, I think you fucked up because you took too long to shit, shower, and shave. So
no,
I gotta show in like 5 to 10 minutes. But
you gotta leave
in 7 minutes. Yeah. But
you said what the the whole
dude. I thought we had 45 minutes to talk, and I thought that you would take 15 to get ready, not fucking 30 or 40.
Wait a second. No. This is bullshit. So first of all, you said 12. The DM I sent you was at 12:09. Okay, and then.
You want me to scroll up to when you were in my chat? I'll scroll up to where you were in my chat.
I do want you to
have like a white PFP, I think.
What do you have to do? A show? With who? PF Young?
Dan Pace.
Who the hell is that?
It's a friend. Okay. You sent me, I need 12 minutes at 12:25.
Okay. So
that would have been 12:37. So you are... 54. You okay? I'll even back it back.
Crazy exaggeration. And you said I heard you distinctly say that I expect it to be 20 minutes. So really, that should be cut down by another 8 minutes. I'm 8 minutes late.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. When you tell me that it's going to take you 12 minutes,
you said I interpret that
you're going to take 20 because I don't fucking believe you.
Yeah, so you said 20. I assume 20, and so really the margin is 8. So we've gone from I'm 50 minutes late to I'm 8 minutes late.
Yeah.
So make that make sense. Make it make sense. You can't.
Well, I thought we would have 20 to 30. If you showed up early, let's say that you showed up at 12:37, then we would have had 20 minutes to bullshit. And then if you showed up within 8 minutes, we had 10 minutes.
We're not even on that. We're on your massive exaggeration. You're like, holy shit, you were 50 minutes late. You're trying to make me seem like horrible to my own audience and to my own people.
No, I don't think you're horrible to your own audience. As a matter of fact, you didn't plan on streaming until 3 p.m., right?
What?
When did you plan on start streaming today?
When is that even a fucking sentence?
When, prior to talking to me,
I said stay on until 3.
You were going to stay on until 3.
I wanted you to stay on until 3. I can also catch you on the flip side. I don't know if that's a phrase. Catch you on the
flippity flop.
Catch you on the after of the Dan Pace. I don't even know who Dan Pace is.
What content did you plan on doing?
I had
today
some serious questions for you.
Tell me the serious question just so I can mentally prep a little bit.
They have to do with politics. They have to do with the question I asked you on Twitter. I wasn't trying to put you on blast, by the way, on Twitter. Like, I really wasn't. People are like, oh, I really fucking wasn't.
You?
I wasn't trying to put you on blast.
Just something DM'd me. Not that it's a big deal. I own my shit.
Really? Wait, really? You would have? Did you have a problem with it? You're like, oh, I wish you DM'd me.
No,
like you're embarrassed.
No, I was just wondering if there was an angle that I had to prepare for. That's what I was wondering. I was wondering if I was being set up for a vector of attack, but I get attacked all the time. It's not a big deal.
A vector of attack.
I was wondering if you were going to be like, you didn't even vote for anybody in the primary, therefore you're a hypocritical piece of shit because you didn't even fight for the Republican who wasn't Trump. Like, I thought that's where it was going.
No,
and I had to recall the timeline because I basically remember, I remember Nikki Haley dropping out, and then I was like, I'm not voting in the primary. I don't give a shit. And I had to go double check because I did, weirdly enough, cheer on Autist Ron during the
Meatball
primary.
Meatball Ron. You cheered him on.
Yeah, but he dropped out even earlier. He dropped out in January.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So as soon as DeSantis, like, dude, I don't even know if Chris Christie was still in the race. Even if Chris Christie was still in the race, what are we going to get? Like 6%? 2%?
You're not even listening to me. The whole point is I'm not trying to put you on a Monday blast or a Tuesday blast or whenever I did that. That wasn't the point of it.
You were, but maybe your audience would. Maybe they would screenshot it. I don't know.
What do you think? My whole purpose is just to undermine you. That's like what you think that my motives might actually be, and also,
well, you're trying to make me a liberal. You're like, you didn't even vote for a Republican. You're practically a liberal anyways.
I'm not trying to make you anything. I'm trying to get you to come out of the closet. That's what because this whole thing.
Yeah, see, now you're calling me gay.
I'm not saying you're gay. No one's talked about gay anything. I mean, the political closet.
From an analogy standpoint, you're saying, hey, you're in the liberal closet. Okay,
yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah. And you're secretly consorting with these elements of liberal. But you have to go to see Dan Pace, right? I might as well talk to Hutch.
Let me check with Dan.
Yeah, see what he's up to.
Let me see if Dan's feelings are going to be hurt. Okay.
I mean, if they will be, it's no big deal. I'll message Hutch. I got friends. Yeah.
Will your feelings be hurt if I rain check? ? I have an annoying friend who wants to talk to me now.
I feel bad. This already feels
not
bad.
Available later.
Oh, I already feel bad about this.
Yeah, good. Feel bad. They never are, man! ! Okay, we can hang out.
Wait, really?
Okay. Parasocial love. Happy.
Holy crap, Pilgrim.
All right.
Have you seen the show Wednesday? By the way,
you have my undivided attention, but I need you to apologize. I need you to apologize to Dan Pace. So say sorry, Dan Pace.
Dan Pace, I'm really sorry that your friend lied to you because I am available later, but I am actually sorry for. God already said that. No, but I do appreciate it. Now would be best. Now would be best for me. This is the best time for me, and so I really do appreciate, Dan, what you had to do and move your schedule around for this kind of stuff. And I know Conor is.
I'll send him a clip of that so he feels better.
Yeah.
All right. Then tell me things. Ask me things.
First of all, I just want to say I apologize to your audience and stuff for derailing you. The first question that I wanted to ask you, is you identify yourself as a Burkean conservative, right? And you identify yourself as like a traditional small government guy.
I'm more statist than a lot of libertarians, but small compared to what the state is right now.
Okay, small compared to what the state is right now. So the first set of questions I have for you is, I want to make sure that if I start like doing this whole talking to you about what's going on with the Conservative Party and talking about how shitty Trump administration is for the next 2-3 years, that you're not going to turn around and go meatball Ron on me. That's what I'm concerned about. I see in my future a meatball Ron Conor future, and that listen, I obviously will talk to people who disagree with me, but I just want to make sure. You seem a little cagey when I bring up meatball Ron. I think you like him.
When you bring up meatball Ron, okay, and I'm assuming you're just talking about Ron DeSantis, him being an autist, him being a Trump skinwalker, him being like a anti-DEI, anti-CRT, anti-this, anti-that, or whatever. But what are your objections? Actually, that's the best question.
Yeah.
What are your objections to Ron DeSantis?
First off, he's a liar, so he'll lie with reckless abandon, and maybe that's true of a lot of politicians, but this guy has a knack for it. B, he does all of the Trump sycophancy that makes us sick and that we should be against, where he's like basically defending the administration on most things, except for the one areas in which he's like able to criticize the administration is when they're not being quote unquote effective enough. Like on not being good enough at the bad shit that they're doing. So why do you like this guy? Is it because you live in Florida and it's like one of those checklists for Florida conservatives to be like, yeah, we love Governor DeSantis. He's sick because he won that massive election and because it just seems cool to like him? Or is there something principally, ideologically that you appeal to? And if so, how do you reconcile that with your support for Haley during the 2024 election?
Yeah.
DeSantis is just another part of the problem.
I think Haley sold her soul. But let's go one step at a time. Let's go with Ron DeSantis.
Oh, I meant Harris. Sorry, Harris.
Yeah. So let's just start with Ron DeSantis and let's start there. Okay. So Ron DeSantis has done some things that I think are cringe. As an example, he took down the Pulse nightclub memorial, which is 20 minutes away from my house, because he didn't want a rainbow flag on a state road. I think that's insulting to the gay community. I think it's insulting to the victims of jihadist terrorist attack. That's cringe. Another thing that he did that I think is cringe is he tried to, but the state of Florida got so fucking mad at him. Like the entire state got so mad at him. I think they shelved the project. He tried to sell a bunch of public lands for development. And effectively they were talking about like tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of state land acres that were going to be sold and developed for like pickleball courts and condominiums and all this bullshit. And what ended up happening was we basically found out that he was in the pockets of some pretty large developers, but that got shelved because the public outcry against selling state lands was so high that they shelved the project. Similar to the Trump administration, by the way. So those are the two cringe things that I can think of. Also the CRT DEI thing. They took any childhood book, middle school, high school, elementary school, that was even vaguely progressive, and they threw it out. So that again is kind of like fucking with the First Amendment in spirit, if not in the letter of the law.
The Disney stuff too, I would put in that category potentially. Yeah, even if it's technically illegal.
But the thing that I think is interesting that actually kind of speaks to the conservatarian. You're under my feet. You're about to knock out the cables. Can you not knock out my cables? Thank you. I love you.
Don't talk to your son like that.
That's my dog. All right. So anyways, okay. So talking about things that Ron DeSantis or whatever might've done, that was correct. Okay. When it came to COVID, you might even remember some of these arguments that there was a utilitarian balance within COVID, which was effectively how open do we keep our society versus how fatal the disease is. And what Florida did, which I actually think is quite reckless, but also quite smart, was that we had a pretty libertarian approach to it, which is if you want a mask. If you're immunocompromised, stay home. If your business is offering work from home, work from home. And if your business is not offering work from home, quit. It was like a very free market style thing. And what ended up happening in Florida, in my opinion, is we did kill a lot of old people. We did kill a lot of immunocompromised people. We did kill a lot of people who flooded the hospitals. But we also bounced back economically super fucking fast. We also bounced back socially super fast. And so that level of libertarian, conservatarian, small government, do what you want to do, I would take that 10 times out of 10 compared to, let's say, New York or any other blue state where they were doing like super aggressive lockdowns.
I'm like not shocked at this answer that it's the COVID stuff and you recognize the potential damage of policies in Florida. And by the way, they existed in blue states too, in New York too, where Cuomo tried to cover up. So did DeSantis, by the way, some of the bad policies explicitly by like hiding deaths attributed to one of the policies of barring the ability of nursing homes to exclude COVID treated patients and stuff like that. So no doubt that there's like potential gripes you can have with certain blue states on COVID policies. Let's not forget DeSantis did institute lockdowns initially. And yeah, like afterwards they became a lot more loose. It's not clear to me that that was the wise decision in the end. And that you would want that kind of cavalierness in the next pandemic. I'm not sure why that's good, but put that to the side almost. I have the feeling that in your mind, the problems that are facing the Republican Party are pretty much, I'm going to put a number to it, and you can reject this number, 90% on the shoulders of Trump. And I think that that is like a distortion. I think that Trump is causally responsible for a lot of this corruption, but he's also an outgrowth of general corruption by the entire Republican Party. And the Republican Party as a whole, and that includes people like Governor DeSantis, also bear a significant amount of responsibility for where the party is right now. And it seems sometimes, and even I can catch into myself in the way I talk, that I talk about Trump as though, oh, I can't wait till Trump is gone and we can lift this burden from our backs and everything is going to be okay. Even just in the way that we so emphasize Trump's corruption, which we ought to, but let's not lose sight of the fact that the Republican Party itself is culpable for where it is right now. That if they wanted to, this Republican Party could, if it wanted to, get rid of Trump. And they had multiple opportunities throughout the course of Trump's time as the leader and shaper of the party to do so, and they haven't done it. And so I'm just like odd that you could look at someone like Ron DeSantis, say, I guess I like prefer a laissez-faire on fucking COVID, even presupposing that's the correct strategy for the next pandemic. Who knows? The next pandemic might not be like COVID. It might be more deadly. Although keep in mind, it's you who says how deadly COVID was. And maybe in light of the 1 million or so people who died as a result of COVID, maybe it wasn't so wrong for us to institute lockdowns. And maybe if we had all done a collective action and been a little bit more strict, like some of these other countries where their death rates are much lower, we would have saved tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives. All that is a way of me saying, like, even if I granted to you the COVID stuff, why are you willing to like ignore the baggage that he is partially responsible for regarding Trump?
Yeah. So as an example, if COVID had the fatality rate and symptoms of Ebola, then it would be the loose restrictions would obviously be the wrong move. And the death rate wouldn't be 1 million, which is still 0.3% of the American population, which is devastating. It would be probably millions or tens of millions. So yeah, it's obvious that being cavalier about pandemic disease isn't always going to be the one size fits all. But what I will tell you with all earnestness is, if you make me choose between a MAGA person, because there is a whole lot of, in my opinion, political, how do I phrase this? Like political expediency within the Republican Party. And what I would say is, in 2016, prior to Trump seizing control of the party, there were plenty of never Trump elements within the Republican Party that were vocal. All the primary opponents were like, this guy's a piece of shit. He's a liar. He's an asshole. Shit. Half the time, members of his cabinet, they're pulling up old quotes for even JD Vance, even Marco Rubio, even whatever. And they're like, this guy's an authoritarian, demagogue, populist piece of shit, and he's going to ruin the Republic. And that's like their quotes from 2016 and 2017. But what's happened is they realized that their base was not along for the ride. And so through Trump 1, they made excuses for him, and they probably warmed up to MAGA as a political project, and they saw the power of populism within the right wing. And then January 6, 2021 should have been a deal breaker. But what happened was they failed to impeach him in the Senate. And what was it? Was it McCarthy? Who was it who failed to go after Trump after? Or was it McConnell?
It was both of them. McConnell said that he thought it was unconstitutional to convict someone who's impeached after they're in office, which of course is a ridiculous thing to say, because it gives you an entire window of misconduct for which you can't, like, basically any time close to where the term is ending or transitioning, the president effectively can't be impeached and given the punishment of disqualification from office.
And there was probably, I think I even heard of a split within the Republican Party where they were saying this was so embarrassing, we don't have to run Trump again. And this is awesome. This is like the best of both worlds, because not only did Trump lose, but also we don't have to run him again because January 6, 2021 was so embarrassing. But I think what ended up happening, I forget if it was McCarthy or McConnell. I think it was McCarthy. McCarthy went to Mar-a-Lago 2 or 3 weeks after January 6, 2021. And then I think even the Never Trumpers within the party were like, oh, fuck. Like they're still doing like a power broker deal with this guy. They're
Yeah.
still trying to
They wanted
re-normalize
to use him for their own ends. McCarthy tried
Right.
to do it, and so did DeSantis. I mean, DeSantis ran his whole campaign was like, no more chaos. We're done with the chaos. Like, he didn't have an ideological problem with anything Trump did. He called all the, I think, totally based in fact and law indictments against Trump like lawfare. He condemned that shit. He was along for the ride, and that all shows that he has bad character. Now, you could say something like the following. You could say that, well, in order to win a primary in the Republican Party, you have to be crazy or something like that. But really, if you're so weak and if you have no conviction whatsoever that you're willing to tell blatant lies and sanction officially with your like open position the like tremendous amounts of violations of the Constitution and of his oath, that is Trump's oath, and just because of public pressure, what good are you? Why do we need public servants like this? Why would you support a public servant who would do such things and basically try to put under the, sweep under the rug all of the horrible shit that Trump did? That would, and it's not going to get you, I think, what you want, which is this return to normalcy. I could at least see if you're going to listen. I don't like the Bushes at all. I don't like these neocon types. I think that they, a lot of them were far too quiet. I prefer them to the MAGA people right now. And I could understand, though, if Liz Cheney, if Chris Christie, if George Conway, though George Conway is now, I think, going to run as a Democrat, that should give you some indication if some of these never Trumpers, bulwark people, they're moving to the Democratic Party. I could understand you like saying, okay, I'll accept this, I'll accept that. And maybe even, although I would think it's too far, Nikki Haley, but Ron DeSantis, Ron DeSanctimonious, that's a bridge too far. And I don't think that you have written him off. I think that if he were in the primary and he won, I think you would vote for him in the general against, Gavin Newsom.
Well, right. And that's what I was going to say. So if the Democratic Party, in my opinion, has issues, and those issues haven't gone away in the past decade. I would say genuflecting to the intersectional progressive bullshit. Happily, that wave has crested and fallen. That's gone. But people remember, man. People remember how crazy 20 was. People remember how crazy the online politics of the left were. People remember how dismissive the left wing was of effectively what happened with social media, man. And I'm really not trying to be a F-slur about this, but like, you have to understand that when I was having arguments in 20 and 21 on Twitch with you, with left-wing creators, and I said, hey, what is happening right now is you are not permitting moderate conservatives onto Twitter and onto Twitch. And so as a result, is they're building their own parallel media apparatus, their own parallel financial apparatus. You're not going to be able to ban them, and they are going to be even more radicalized because they're in their silos.
Yeah, I wasn't fighting you on that. Just to be clear, to the extent that you were saying that, I was never fighting you on. Yeah, okay.
You might not have, but plenty of people said, skill issue, shut the fuck up, loser. It's a private platform. They can do what they want, blah, 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 blah. I heard endless excuses.
Well, wait, I said that. Wait. I said that they have the right to do what they want, but you would say that. But you're just basically saying something that's true and based is like wrong.
Would be, they have the legal right to do so.
I know, because people were saying crazy shit because they were saying, "Oh, you're violating the First Amendment."
Bad for the Republic.
No, but
that's what I said at the time.
But because people were making the extra argument, they weren't just saying this is bad policy. They were saying this is bad policy and it's illegal, and Trump should sue them all, and they should be forced to platform these individuals by the government. That's what they were saying.
Yeah, but that was like lecture fan, and no offense, I think that I think
not
that
just
Dylan
them.
Burns,
not just them. I mean, they filed lawsuits over this.
Gibbs and Rob Knorr, okay, but
they were all saying it. They're all like they can't do this. They take away their Section 3 protections. And this is crazy violation of the First Amendment. They get all these subsidies from the government, and therefore they are equivalent to the government, so they can't censor.
Okay, then I am right now, I am probably guilty of something that I think I'm constantly guilty of, is I feel like I'm making a sane, rational argument, but I'm lost in the sauce because I'm stuck between two political tribes. That's what I feel like. And so I agree with you. MAGA's insane. MAGA was making a whole bunch of arguments that legalistically didn't make sense. They were appealing to legality instead of morality. They were doing things that weren't descriptively accurate. I agree with you 100%. However, my frustration with that is that we kind of missed the forest for the trees or whatever, where effectively, because we spent the past 2 years arguing about legality, well, the world was moving on regardless of our arguments. And what ended up happening is effectively what I predicted, which is that the right wing has siloed itself into a media ecosphere where they basically just come up with talking points that are provably either false, misleading, lies of omission, propagandistically convenient, whatever. And now we effectively have siloed realities.
And I've never bought this just so story. I mean, like, I agree that on certain platforms, people were silenced and they were forced to go elsewhere 100%, but they were never on mass silence. They have this, the biggest news organization in the country, Fox News, pumping out their shit all the time. Same thing with their talk radio shows. Same thing, the podcast circuits. The Democrats weren't even in the contention there. And so it's not like they were, they were creating ecosystems on that front for sure. And maybe some of it had to do with them being pushed off those platforms.
We don't necessarily have to spend this entire conversation litigating the past.
Sure.
But I do want to point out that with COVID in particular, things that I just said within the past like 30 minutes, within the past hour, those are things that could get you community guideline strikes. Just
which
talking
stuff?
About COVID.
Which stuff?
Specifically saying that I think that a libertarian opened the whatever thing, blah 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 blah. Yes, because. Stephen got COVID community guideline strikes
for
because
what?
He was watching COVID content and then he was responding to it, effectively saying, no, this is what's actually true. Factually responding to COVID misinformation got Stephen community guidelines.
That went away where they wait, but that went away when
Chud Logic didn't even talk about COVID, but when he mentioned COVID, he had to keep saying like, consult your doctor, whatever, because he got a community guideline strike about COVID.
So
he's not even like he's not even.
I'm not sure I'm not sure the particulars. I had plenty of debates about COVID on Twitch. Never had an issue for people saying there should not be criminal penalties. There should not be this.
More than Twitch, to be fair.
What's that? Well, Twitch.
I think it was YouTube more than Twitch, to be fair.
Okay, I mean, I remember these conversations happening. Maybe it's the case that there were some community flags or false positives and that kind of thing, but I never heard of permanent bans or anything like that. And Stephen didn't get banned ultimately from Twitch because of what happened with COVID, or let alone YouTube. I think
Crowder is one of the I think Steven Crowder is one of the biggest lying, disingenuous pieces of shit in online politics. I really think he is, but I do think that he was probably getting real demonetization and real community guideline strikes, both for COVID misinformation and election misinformation, and that's why he moved to Rumble.
No, but that's not what you're describing. What you're describing is taking a libertarian position on lockdowns and advocating that they should be ended. That was.
I think during COVID, if I had discussed COVID as I just discussed it now, I would not be surprised by getting a
then holy shit. I was seeing that everywhere
within the first 6 months to a year of COVID.
I was seeing that on Twitter. I was seeing that on Facebook. I was seeing that on YouTube. I was seeing that on Twitch. And we were having these conversations.
Misinformation or what were you talking about?
About policy disagreements, about what should be done. I'll
admit that policy disagreements weren't as likely to trigger a community guidelines thing as far as like actually talk about lethality or the vaccines or vaccine skepticism or whatever. I'll admit that. Policy disagreements happen.
I want to take your invitation to not, spend so much time litigating.
Let's not litigate the past. Let's not spend all our time there.
I don't even necessarily agree with those measures. I in fact, never was in favor of like this mass banning and stuff because, for one, I happen to think that it's really, unless you have a more tailored guideline policy, it can lead to people feeling unfair with those platforms. It can lead to people feel, and I like to hear different opinions. So in general, I'm not in favor of that kind of content restriction stuff. I think the shadow banning stuff also, I'm not in favor of that. And I know that some people were like, fuck around and find out. That was never my attitude on that stuff. I wasn't in support of it, and certainly not on like the woke stuff where you couldn't say anything. There were certain topics that you had to be very careful about with respect to like, I don't know, race and gender ideology, that kind of stuff. That stuff I recognize, but just take a bigger.
The thrust of what you're saying is, or what I think the thrust is what you're saying is that the Republican Party sold its soul to Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, and it would be shameful. I think you're saying, to, if they change their tune even moderately, to instantly go, oh, all is forgiven. Let's move past this. I'm going to start voting for you along
kind of,
political line.
because basically I think that the premise of your attitude here, which isn't, I'm not saying that you're so pro DeSantis, you just love the guy. I'm not saying that, but like, I am seeing a kind of like, I'm going to see how things play out. Kind of analysis here, and I'm gonna.
You're right. I'm gonna see how things play out.
Yeah, I know. I know, and the reason I'm saying that is I think that the underlying premise to that attitude is this notion that Trump is like the vast majority responsible for where you're at as a party, since you still identify as a Republican. When I think the Republican Party but they're culpable actors. They're not just going along for the ride. And in some ways, like, yeah, they were supplanted from the powers of the ultimate authority, but Lindsey Graham is still chummy with Trump, and they're getting their favors, and they are getting stuff as part of this bargain. And even to this day, they're using their power, to the extent that it still exists, and it does still exist, to marshal support for the president. So that's all right now.
Can I use the Department of Education as an example for how Republicans have cynically used Trump?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So within education has largely been complained about within Republican spheres for a long time, because they think that the outcomes suck. They think that public education sucks. They don't like their kids being, unless they want to shill out tens of thousands of dollars for private school. They don't like that their kids are compelled in order to learn a federal education. They also think it's like too liberal, too gay, too progressive, too this, too standardized, et cetera, et cetera. And so there was a push, which actually originates from, I think, fascist thinking, by the way, which is effectively there's like two things that you can do with a political thing. Within economy of energy, you can either reform an institution or you can leave an institution. And what Republicans decided is that they were going to leave the institution. So they're either going to homeschool, they're going to private school, they're going to do something else, and they're going to gut the existing institution so it's as ineffective as possible in order to fuck over Democrats. That's what Republicans largely decided to do. Now, there's reasons for why they think what they think. I think they made a political mistake. But within the DOE, there are people who genuinely believe that the federal government is teaching their kids to be gay, trans, ignore science, whatever talking point you want to come up.
Which is insane, right? I mean, it is literally insane.
Regardless of whether or not it's insane or delusional, they genuinely, earnestly believe that the world is better off if the DOE is gutted. And so for them, what the Trump administration is a huge victory. Number one, probably because of the repeal of Roe versus Wade. Number two, because of the destruction of the Department of Education. And so as a result, while Trump's an ephebophilic sex trafficking rapist, maybe Donald Trump has killed hundreds of thousands of African people. These people can't even conceptualize Africans as people. They don't even really mathematically, oh, there's human beings who are dying all over the world because of my actions. It does not compute. I've talked to these people about what's happened. It does not compute to them. They're not Americans. I don't care. That's their entire attitude. And so to them, gutting the DOE and repealing Roe versus Wade, they already have the two largest conservative cultural victories in decades. That's how they feel about Trump. And if they have to go around they'll ignore the ephebophilic sex trafficking ring. But let's say that Donald Trump is an ephebophilic sex trafficker, they'll come up with a way to sweep that out of their mind as well.
If that's your view, and listen, I don't think that this sex trafficking ring, I'm not as confident as you that it's been established to go beyond Epstein and Maxwell and maybe a couple other people. I have not taken the position that we are able to allege it applies to other third parties beyond those, a couple perhaps, beyond Maxwell and Epstein. But if that's the case, and if that's your view of what Republicans are willing to do, why would you reward them by considering such awful people to get your vote? Right? Like, this is a character issue at this point. It's a character flaw.
Let's differentiate. Are we talking about representatives or are we talking about the populace?
The sanctimonious.
Because some of these actions, the most egregious actions that I think are so egregious that they threaten the social fabric of the republic. January 6, 2021, the 2022 constitutional tweet, deploying the military into American cities,
Yeah.
violation of 4th, 5th, and 8th Amendment rights of non-citizens being deported to Central and South America. I think that these people are politically pragmatic. I don't think they command the cults of personality and the charisma that Donald Trump does. I don't think they're going to be able to get away with it. And so effectively, if JD Vance and if Ron DeSantis were technocratically competent people who were proposing good legislation, and you gave me an option between them and Mamdani, I would choose them over Mamdani.
JD Vance.
And maybe even Harris, if Harris had dog shit policy.
JD Vance supports all these things that you say you hate of the new administration.
But I agree with Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg was asked about JD Vance, and he's like, "What do you think about JD Vance? Do you think he's a fascist?" And he said, "I think that JD Vance is whatever he needs to be. When he needed to be a Silicon Valley Democrat, he was a Silicon Valley Democrat. When he needed to be a never Trump Republican, he was a never Trump Republican. When he needed to be Trump's biggest brown-nosing, blow-jobbing, sycophant piece of shit, he was that." And so JD Vance, in my opinion, he does go where the wind blows.
Doesn't that make him more malicious in a sense? Right? Like,
he's a huge piece of shit. He's like a sociopathic piece of shit who's gotten hundreds of thousands of people killed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
but you might vote for him, and that has to do because you think that he's less sincere than Mamdani.
Mamdani could be totally sincere and still have horrible policy.
Yeah, no, but like in terms of this people issue, in terms of the character issue, you're taking someone who is so transparently self-motivated and interested only in obtaining higher office for its own sake, and you're, I guess, comforted by the fact that you think that they're not going to be able to accomplish anything. You don't grant that to Mamdani in the context of a mayor. Not that Mamdani is going to be able to run for president. We're just speaking hypothetically, of course, because he's not a natural-born citizen. But like, you're granting that Mamdani is almost certainly more sincere than these people in that he wants to get power to improve in his mind, to improve the lives of these individuals. So even if it were the case,
Mao Zedong thought he was doing the right thing. Joseph Stalin thought he was doing the right thing. Pol Pot thought he was doing the right thing. Yeah, now, you might say that Mamdani is a democratic socialist who's operating within a democratic system, and I'll take that as not historically analogous. But you have to understand that the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Sincerity and earnestness doesn't really matter if what you're trying to accomplish is not good.
JD Vance said that he was willing to abide by Trump's plan of the false elector scheme, and he would have used the ceremonial role of the vice president in reading out the votes of the different states for president. He would have used that for Trump's own ends. And I think that you believe him that he would have done that.
Yeah, let me explain this real quick, and hopefully this will help you out a little bit, because I think that considering that I've made character arguments against Trump, this might seem hypocritical, but that's okay. I think when I make character arguments, I'm not making character arguments for their own sake. I'm making character arguments because I think they inform policy. So as an example, when Donald Trump is willing to lie in order to steal the casino in Atlantic City, I think that just shows that he's a conniving, lying piece of shit. When Donald Trump cheats on his pregnant wife with a pornographic actress and then uses his own lawyer in campaign funds in order to pay her off, and not even pay her off, lie about paying her off so she doesn't even know that she's being paid off, and then use his own lawyer to do so and then reimburse with campaign funds, it tells me that not only is he manipulative, he's manipulative, lying, and he's cheap, which is like almost a sin in and of it to itself when you're a fucking billionaire. But anyways, so these are character arguments, but it's because I think it informs his policy. Recently, I don't even necessarily think of, I don't think that seeing who JD Vance was in 2016 and 2017, I don't even think it's explanatory to believe that JD Vance is a human. I don't even think of him as a human. I think of him as the avatar of the will of the people who are supporting him, which was largely Peter Thiel at the time, and is probably going to be Peter Thiel once Donald Trump is gone. And so JD Vance is not a human being. JD Vance is an amalgamation of aligned interest. And so if that aligned interest is good for the country, I will vote for JD Vance. If that interest is bad for the country or substantively worse than a Democrat, then I will vote for a Democrat.
Why didn't you make this calculation of Trump? Why wasn't
Because
that dispositive?
not only was Trump a terrible person, his amalgamation of aligned interest is disastrous. And I've made that argument too.
It's any worse than JD Vance's?
Yeah.
In what material fashion?
JD Vance says what he needs in order to be good with the Trump administration and maintain a good
wait, and Trump doesn't say
you asked
Trump
a question, I'm going to answer it. Like it or not, Donald Trump is a power broker within the Republican Party. He gets to decide who's in the club and who's not. So staying on Trump's good graces is how you obtain power in the Republican Party, but it's not going to be in 3 years. And as far as I know, JD Vance is he's a Trojan horse from Silicon Valley by Peter Thiel in order to deregulate Silicon Valley. That way the Thielites and the techno-feudalists like Elon Musk can make fucking genetically modified cat humans that they can have sex with in their basements and or colonize Mars. So once again,
you say these outlandish things, but you also call JD Vance an outgrowth. Okay, I get it. No, the point I'm making though is you said, I made a calculation that Trump maybe is worse as a person, but also his amalgamated interests are like worse than JD Vance's. But like, let me just address that. I don't see why you would have that inference. I don't know in what material way Trump's amalgamated interests are different in nature than Trump, so as to make them less appealing than JD Vance's. If anything, right? Trump at least is missing that as close connection to Peter Thiel, etc. And further than that, like, think about Trump's total inconsistencies on almost a daily basis. You want to talk about someone who is being moved by amalgamated interest and flattery. The dude said that Mom Donnie's going to be a great mayor, who just like weeks ago, he was saying he's a communist, Islamic fucking terrorist jihadist.
The whiplash is part of the problem, though. Maybe I turned on my politics brain and I'm being way too reptilian right now. I don't know. But the whiplash is part of the problem. So, for instance, you saw this in the market, by the way, when Donald Trump declared tariffs, we took a temporary hit, particularly in the markets where the tariffs were gone. And then we saw a rally as people said, okay, I can still make money this way. But then Donald Trump would come out 2 days later because he had a conversation with somebody and he would change the tariffs. And then the market would hit and then it would recover. And then he did it again and again and again and again and again. The unpredictability is part of the problem.
But that's what you're saying is characteristic of JD Vance.
Be like that.
How not? You're saying that JD Vance will do whatever he needs to.
JD Vance commands a charismatic cult of personality and a lack of ideological vision that he would whiplash his own policies back and forth repeatedly?
Lack of ideological vision, that's your assessment of JD Vance, not mine. That's your assessment of JD Vance.
Well, I think that there's power brokers who are going to step in once Trump is gone, who will provide a coherent vision to JD Vance that he will try to lead. He'll use MAGA rhetoric, but the policy execution is going to be totally different.
And the individuals you have identified are Peter Thiel and
Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, that wing of the MAGA movement. They'll use the rhetoric of the MAGA movement. They'll use the rhetoric of Trump in order to seize power, but it's largely going to be like techno libertarian shit.
These are disgusting, out of touch degenerates who have like these visions of grandeur, delusions of grandeur, of colonizing Mars, never going to happen, and like spreading their seed to as many different
vision, son.
What's that?
I said, damn, you lack vision, son. You think we can't colonize Mars with some robots?
Not in the next 1,000 years.
I think we could do it in the next century, but that's okay. Continue.
You're delusional.
Why?
You don't.
Do you want to go? Do you want to talk about politics, or do you want to talk about colonizing Mars?
Because you're not going to be able to terraform Mars in the next century. It's a delusional idea that, like, we need to. We can't terraform. Okay, what would you do? How would you colonize it? How would you make it livable for people? Biodome it. And what the effects of gravity over a long period of time, the lack of any protection from these ultra gamma whatever radiation spikes all the time, the fact that like the air, there's no fucking air to breathe. It's there's no like a significant atmosphere. This is not an easy project. A biodome. Give me a break. Why? To what end? Why are we doing this if we can't make it a hospitable place for more people? We're spending all these resources. It's a childish fantasy And we should start, if we're going to start at all, by terraforming. How about Iran, where they don't have like reliable water right now? There's a crisis. Why not like the Sahara on Earth? We can't even do that. So this whole thing, these are delusional, like meta-humans in the context of like Peter Thiel, or they're babies, man babies, like Elon Musk, who every time he has a temper tantrum, he is doing unhinged shit and like high on ketamine half the time. And you want to give the country to these people by electing JD Vance on your own lights.
Compared to the alternative. Depends on what the alternative
Which is like a standard Democrat like Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, the standard Democrat like Gavin Newsom. Kamala Harris was a standard Democrat. Kamala Harris was tweeting about gun control 30 days from the election, which was so fucking dumb that I can't believe that you guys can't get your head out of your own ass in reference to firearms. And then not just that, also the what is it? It's like the tax on unearned capital gains or whatever, a wealth tax.
Frog people, over the frog people,
freak out and turn pink about it. But at the same time, you have to understand how many center-left rich people abandoned Kamala Harris at the last minute because she was proposing a wealth tax.
I
understand that, right?
And by the way, I have no reason to believe. I have no reason to believe that proposal.
Profit,
yeah.
Okay. When it comes, well, yeah, I didn't believe the proposal either. That's why I checked the box next to Kamala Harris's name. I also didn't think that she was going to be able to get into
I didn't mean that. I meant like I have no reason to believe that significantly is on the election. My intuition is if we pulled a wealth tax, that most Americans would support it. That's my intuition, because whenever you ask Americans, working
class Americans would support it. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't have any. I have no reason to think that Kamala Harris's support of a wealth tax impacting negatively her results in the election. I have no reason to think that is an unpopular policy.
But this is exactly okay. So this is where like you don't believe, or a couple of weeks ago you didn't believe that we had principal differences. This is where the rubber's going to meet the road. Okay. I was raised to believe and sincerely believe that the average American is a fucking dumbass who should not be let around power. Okay. We elect technocratic elites. And by the way, our technocratic elites kind of suck right now. They do suck. They probably always sucked, but they especially suck right now because we can see what they think on Twitter, and half of them are dumbasses too. Okay. But we're supposed to elect technocratic elites who craft policy that is good, not just for them on an individual basis, but it's good for the economy. It's good for Americans. It's good for the country. It's good for the national interest. That's the ideal of republicanism. But I feel like Republicans have abdicated their responsibility within the past 2 or 3 generations, where all they've done from a technocratic policy standpoint is they've deregulated and cut taxes, and they've gone too far and they've fucked up our social fabric. But I will remind you that this wasn't always the case, real quick. Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. He set up the national park system. He was responsible for enforcing the Monroe Doctrine. He was responsible for American military and diplomatic hegemony within the Western hemisphere.
Now talk about Lincoln.
Richard Nixon, probably in a lot of people's eyes, one of the most like malevolent presidents ever, was a Republican who established the EPA. It is possible for Republicans to be technocrats. They just haven't done it in 2 generations.
Yeah, but it's so preposterous what you're talking about right now, because what is Theodore? Yes, look at your examples. Theodore Roosevelt, one of his like biggest accomplishment is what? Trust busting. These people want to further their trusts. They want to further monopolize and centralize power behind this accumulation of capital. And why are they pissed at people like Lena Khan and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the DOJ starting these lawsuits about monopolies? Is because they want to monopolize. So you cite Theodore Roosevelt, the people that you're trying to put in charge specifically don't want that. You cite environmental policy, both Theodore Roosevelt national parks and the EPA under Richard Nixon. These guys want to get rid of all of these environmental regulations. They are in favor of gutting the EPA. They're in favor of drilling oil from the very last endangered species on the last marshland in the whole country. They don't give a fuck about the environment. They're totally in favor of gutting any kind of regulation. That's one of the reasons why people criticize the abundance agenda, because they think that there's some potential collusion between abundance libs and gutting environmental regulations and these people who, like Elon Musk, who've kind of signaled, oh, we're kind of pseudo interested in abundance. Now, I don't think that is a necessary entailment of the abundance agenda, so I'm not making that proposition. But I'm just saying, all of the great Republicans from a bygone era that you're citing to, they are way more similar to your average Democrat, and the technocrats, more like plutocrats, capitalists, major oligarchs that are running the country, the people that you want to put in power, because that's your vision of who is really controlling the strings of JD Vance, they're all against the shit that you just cited as like the wonderful possibility for Republicans. And of course, we're just in a whole different era when it comes to the Republican Party. It's like, it doesn't even make sense to compare the Republican Party under Theodore Roosevelt or Richard Nixon, who's coming from like California Republican and is like a liberal Republican in that sense, to the current modern Republican Party. So on every level, I think your analysis sucks.
I think Jeb and George aren't as lost as you might think they are. And by the way, they might not even be power brokers anymore. The Iraq War might have tarnished George Bush's legacy and might have tarnished his brother so much that
they hate JD Vance. They hate JD Vance.
Why JD Vance?
Because he's part of this new wave of degenerate, like, pop in their minds. This guy, who is this guy? JD Vance. He's a nobody. He comes from Appalachia. He's not part of the Bush dynasty. He's not coming from this like established, lineage of political heritage. Like George Bush is born in like New England, and they have this kind of like more elitist cultural connections, and they're in higher society.
Yeah, JD Vance is still Silicon Valley, and isn't he Ivy League educated too, though? Like,
yes,
I know what you're
he
saying.
Is. No, all I'm saying is
Appalachian roots, but I'm saying he's been.
They don't view him as part of the club.
A little bit.
The Bushes and these neocons who are irrelevant right now, they're irrelevant. They're totally irrelevant. They don't view JD Vance as part of the club, and they're dying, Connor. They're dying. They're not in control.
No. Hold on. This is where I agree with you. Okay. And we should talk about this, because this is probably the most important part. I have two options from my perspective, and bear in mind, I'm irrelevant. I'm talking to 100 people in my chat. Now, my chat is very generous. They're like, holy shit, they're generous. I can't even thank them enough for how much they donate to my chat. But realistically, what I have is 60 liberals and I got 40 conservatarian libertarians. And they fucking oil because they miss sane Republicans. And you're saying sane Republicans are endangered, borderline going extinct. And I agree with you. Okay, I agree with you. But there's two options here. I'm at a crossroads. Okay. And by the way, Bill Kristol, arguably one of the people, I think I already told you what he said, which is basically, fuck it. It's a lost cause. Go to the Democratic Party, try to take over the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But here's two options. In my opinion, the Democrat Party is actually probably the easier option, but that's almost why I think somebody needs to fight for the right. So get Democrats to stop being cringe about guns. Possible, not probable, but possible. And then get Democrats to be a little bit more economically competent and not to rub elbows with socialists and communists. No offense. Whenever I talk to you guys about this, you guys don't seem to want to give that up. You don't seem to want to give up the gun control. You don't seem to want to give up the fucking rubbing elbows. And by the way, you want me to come over and people like me to come over to your side just so I can bolster your voting block enough so you can beat the other side. It's not because you actually agree with me on the things that I talk about. It's because you just want that little bit of electoral edge in order to beat the other side. Or what's going to happen is Donald Trump, hold on, here's the other option. Donald Trump is going to be gone. He's going to be a lame duck. And realistically, his presidency was a disaster compared to what MAGA was promised, compared to what Donald Trump has delivered. These are huge gaps in expectation. And so what's going to happen is, in my opinion, even within Republicans, especially if he's proven to be an ephebophilic sex trafficking rapist, the Donald Trump label and power broker thing is going to be extremely damaged. And that's going to be a power vacuum. That power vacuum is going to be filled by the people who have the right policy, the right balls, the right funding.
But that ain't
right
JD Vance. But that ain't JD Vance.
But if you concede it to JD Vance, he automatically wins. Why would you auto concede?
I'm not conceding to JD Vance.
Yes,
I don't want to.
You're saying come over and be a Democrat.
Wait. No, that's not conceding JD Vance. That's fighting JD Vance. That's fighting. Happy birthday. Wait, is your birthday, Connor?
It's my birthday in a few days.
Oh, happy almost birthday. I'm not conceding to JD Vance. What I'm telling you, I'm just having a conversation with you.
Party to JD Vance because you're saying that people like me shouldn't stay in the party and fight him.
It's lost, right? It's lost.
Why? Because some fucking dude, if I could say the F slur, I would. Why? Because some billionaire New Yorker Democrat used economic populism in order to propagandize the working class to voting Republican for the first time in a decade or in decades. Because some fucking F slur who can barely say a few sentences above a middle school educational level, he came in and he skinned the party alive. That's why it's over. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Like the entirety of the United States has dealt with more existential shit than Donald Trump for the entirety of its history.
You're like
Donald
the last
road bump historically.
You're like the last Japanese soldier holding out on one of these like Pacific islands.
And I'll die.
40 years 40 years after World War II is over, and they have to call in this like decrepit 100-year-old George Bush in his wheelchair, and he can't even speak anymore, and be like, "You're relieved of your duty, Conor. You don't have to be Republican anymore." Like, you are fighting a war that is over.
Bush relieves me of duty. You're right. When George Bush goes up and he's like, "Hey, man, I try to get a few billionaires together in order to back like a neocon capitalist resurgence within the Republican Party. I wasn't able to find anybody in order to back this project. You are relieved of duty." That's when I'll hang up the spurs. When George W. Bush relieves me of duty.
George Bush is a grandpa. George Bush didn't even comment on the last elections. The last thing that George Bush has done, he comments whenever there's like an assassination or something, to be like, "Oh, me and Laura are really fucking sad about shit." But he is not engaged in politics. And if he tried it would
joint statement with Obama like 3 months ago
on like political violence, not on like politics.
George Bush.
They're opening libraries. They're going to funerals. They're doing what grandpas do.
And you know what grandpas have, Pisco?
Oh, don't say this.
Tell me, what do they have?
Yeah, they are able to appeal to older people or something. And they have like organizational. They vote. Tell me what they
more selfishly.
They have money.
What do
I don't
grandpas
know.
have?
Money, pensions.
Yes, they have inheritances that they want to pass down to the next generation. Absolutely.
I can't believe I'm hearing this.
Do you think George, Jeb, Barbara, I'm trying to think of other people. Do you think Paul Ryan, do you think any of the Republicans of the past, by the way, Paul Ryan has disappeared for a decade, probably because he got so fucking sick of the R-slurred stuff in the Republican Party.
He has no power. He has no power. He has no power. It wasn't fun for him to be a Republican.
You think he doesn't have millionaire or billionaire friends that are willing to back a younger generation?
They've abandoned it.
With his values?
They don't. It doesn't matter. It's over. They have to have some version of Trumpism because the base just doesn't want this old style conservative anymore.
Do you know what Trumpism appeals to that it has fundamentally correct?
What?
That they never use the words wealth inequality, but they talk about wealth inequality all the time. They also talk about rapid demographic change, both the collapse of the birth rate and mass immigration. They also talk about existential technological shifts where the working class of America are being left behind. And they're appealing to and capitalize on the dissolution of the social fabric.
What's the point of this irrelevant ramble?
Sorry, go ahead.
What's the point of that irrelevant ramble? Yeah, okay. You talk to PF Young, and you think that this is a genuine concern, and they speak to it. What does that have to do with anything we're talking about?
That if you want to seize MAGA's power, you don't have to become all of the things that you describe about Trump that make Trump a bad guy are not why he won power.
I'm not trying to diagnose why Trump won power. I'm trying to tell you, regardless of how he did, he won, and you lost. And the war's over, and you're not going to get George W. Bush to save you.
Do you know why?
I don't
Because
care. It is what doesn't matter.
No. This is exactly why. It's because the people in my political bloc were, because of generational issues, let's be real, it's probably an ageist thing. They were asleep at the wheel when these things were happening. And they said, the economy's doing good. Who gives a shit? The economy's doing good. Who gives a shit? The economy's doing good. Who gives a shit? Whoops, we blew up the economy. That's what happened with the people that should have been dealing with these problems. And it will take philosophical conservatives and it will take philosophical liberals to address these issues.
Wait, the philosophical conservatives that got us into this mess in the first place? Who's responsible for this, wealth inequality and the problems with the economic crisis? Let me finish this. One, on terms of income inequality, that kind of shit, you can thank Reagan for that and Reaganism. You saw massive increases in wealth inequality after Reagan, and Clinton's policies that you want us to return back to. In that respect, I support the trade deals, to be clear, and I support free trade. I'm not talking about that. And then also deregulation, which is something else you support. Deregulation of these financial institutions when it comes to the pushing and pushing of mortgages, even to people who couldn't afford them. This is all problems of directly on the old class of Republicans who fucked us for generations. And now you're just like, oh, we need to give power back to these people because they are going to need to solve wealth inequality. Like, it's a fucking joke.
No. You're misunderstanding. I don't want to give power back to those people. I want those people to give power to the next generation. And maybe, by the way, things change. Things obviously change. Okay. So just as an example, let's just talk about housing because you mentioned it. So the problem with housing is, I'm pretty sure, I would have to look up, it's the guy with the big nipples. The guy with the big nipples co-wrote a bill in order to make mortgages more accessible.
Big nipples?
Yeah, big nipples guy. Who's big nipples? Give me a second. I think it's funny enough to look up. Representative with big nipples. Trump made fun of him. Rob Noor? No.
Someone says Barney Frank. You're talking
Barney Frank. Barney Frank. Dodd-Frank Act.
Yeah, that was Obama. Okay. That was Obama. That's someone who. Obama. You know the president you didn't vote for. Obama. You know the guy that that you didn't vote for and that you don't like. That's Obama.
No. There was a different one. Maybe it wasn't Dodd-Frank. Frank Housing Act. I swear to God, it was Frank. He does have huge nipples. Frank Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act of 68. I don't know. Who gives a fuck? Well, let's stop talking about Dodd-Frank's or Mr. Frank's nipples. Okay.
The broader point is, okay, these are.
I want to talk about housing real quick.
All right, go talk about housing.
I'll try to be super brief about it.
Yeah.
What happened was housing was unfair. And so what they did is they secured the mortgages, they made them federally backed, and they also made them more accessible to working class people. This caused a housing boom where we were building shitloads of housing through the 2000s, and this was a large part of the economy, and people were making money hand over fist. But because it was so deregulated, they were making risky loans to plenty of people who had no business getting those loans. You could go ahead and watch whatever that movie is, The Big Short, in order to see how it went. But effectively what ended up happening was after this time period, we collapsed the entire market through 2008. It was the worst financial disaster besides COVID and besides the Great Depression. And then we stopped building houses, and the financial incentives that were there because of the reckless incentivization of building houses has remained stagnant for the past 20 years. So yes, we have a problem with demography. We have a problem with population. We have a problem with affordability. But one of the problems that you solve pricing with is supply. So what arguably we need to do, I hate to say this, is we need to implode the American economy again through excess housing supply. And the federal government has the capacity to do that. So I would almost argue, hey guys, did you enjoy the 2000s to 2008 housing bubble? We're doing it again because we're going to make it so average working class Americans can afford houses. And then I would straight up repeat the financial incentives in order to get into a house. Maybe a little bit smarter this time.
Okay. I mean, you recognize that the mortgage crisis was attendant to rising prices in homes, right? and overvaluation of homes. And
but we would focus on supply.
Okay. And you want to build more
demand,
homes.
Demand outstrips supply.
Great,
that doesn't mean
too.
that there wasn't a substantial.
Great, me too. I want to build more too. Great. I don't know what the fuck this has to do with fighting a lost war. Number one,
we don't have to be as dumb as the previous generation. We can make new mistakes, brand new stupid mistakes that are as glorious and retarded as the old ones. But we don't have to make the same mistakes.
I don't even think we're having a conversation right now, Connor. I don't feel that we're talking about the same thing.
You said it's lost, quit. And I'm saying, fuck you, no. That's what's happening.
I think you need to be realistic about the prospects of a J.D. Vance presidency or a, in what way does a J.D. Vance presidency empower the people you want to empower? In what sense?
Well, I mean, number one, it probably depends on what they're deregulating or whatever. But I am way less cynical about like techno-futurism, techno-feudalism. I'm way less cynical about that than you are, obviously.
You said these are like crab people. These are crab people. These are crab people. They want to turn parts of the country into their tech fiefdoms. Their ideology is like...
I think they'll probably create insane technologies that will revolutionize humanity. Do you understand? Hold on, real quick, just as an example, because you have this thing and liberals in general, no offense. You have this thing where you guys just act confidently correct that everybody but you is a massive piece of shit and incapable of doing anything right. Do you understand Starship? Do you understand like what Starship does? Can you tell me what Starship does briefly?
I don't even know what Starship is.
Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's kind of my point. So Starship is Elon Musk's creation. It's a heavy lift, repeatable vehicle.
Oh, yeah. And it's like blowing up, right?
No.
And they funded it for like a shit ton of money, and they're like constantly behind schedule and not meeting their marks, right?
Well, number one, that's like the history of NASA. So being expensive and being behind budget is not like...
it's also the history of Elon Musk, like straight up lying, Hyperloop, and the Boring Company, and we're going to have self-driving cars. Don't worry, guys, it'll pay for itself.
I want to ask you again, do you know what Starship's technical capacity is?
I don't have any specific technical expertise to tell you what Starship is. I think it's like a reusable... The whole notion, right? It's like a reusable thing. That's not the most I know about it.
Okay, it can. I would have to make sure. As a matter of fact, is it 300,000 pounds? I think it's 300,000 pounds.
You just want to play 40K. You just want it to be like 40K, and you want to create 40K, but you forget that 40K is like the worst of all possible. 40K is a dystopia.
No. What's the gay fucking farming game that all the lefties play?
Don't use gay in the pejorative. You do this a lot.
No, it actually might be a homosexual game. What's the game where like you farm and shit?
Farmville. There's that's an old one. Fucking.
All right, your chat knows what I'm talking about.
Terraria. I don't know.
Game. So what the fuck?
No, but like,
game's better.
Who gives a shit about Starship?
Well, give me a second and I'll tell you why. What is Starship's lift capacity? It's either 30,000. I don't want to say like 30,000 tons because I think that's crazy. Oh, 150 metric tons. Okay. So I think it's 300,000 pounds and or 150 metric tons. And effectively, what that means is you can move 300,000 pounds of gear across the planet in 90 minutes. Okay. It went from Tampa to the Indian Ocean off the coast of India in 90 minutes. It travels 17,000 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, and how much did it cost? How much fuel did it use?
No idea. But at the same time, if you're talking about military technology, military capacity, if you're talking about like the lasers coming online in reference to the United States, in reference to a battleship, in reference to the C-130, there are tons of technologies that are going to be like so important to the future of the human race. And I understand like we should take care of our people. We don't disagree on that. People should have food, water, shelter, or it should be extremely cheap and available. We don't disagree on that. But you're kind of like casting out the entire like tech bro project because you don't like them on a personal level. And I think that's silly. I think that's silly as fuck.
I am not. We need to have, in many respects, I'm abundance build. I think we need new inventions. I think we need to be funded. That's why, by the way,
and more infrastructure, right? We need to build the cities of the future and the trains of the future and all that bullshit.
That requires government to work
It also, and by the way, abundance libs want deregulation in reference to like city infrastructure projects and state infrastructure projects.
The smart abundance libs are very tailored about which areas that they want, quicker checks and less environmental reviews and that kind of stuff. And even then, like I think we have to be more tailored and thoughtful and smart. So no doubt we need more inventions. We need to build more stuff. All that stuff is absolutely true, but that requires government to function, government to work. JD Vance trying to destroy government. These tech feudalists, they don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about any of this stuff. And before we start working about Starship, why don't we worry about the housing and energy crisis in the country now before we start spending $100 billion to move whatever bullshit thing you said from one place to another? How about we get our infrastructure to be effective with the technologies we currently have, as opposed to putting all our eggs in this basket. And again, when there's so much potential danger in elevating someone like JD Vance for the sole purpose of, I guess, your technological ambitions on this assumption that it's going to lead to more technology. Remember what JD Vance is helping oversee. He's helping oversee Doge cuts and massive cuts to research in this country. He's overseeing these tariffs, which are degrowth, which are horrible. He's ideologically in favor of these kinds of tariffs. So he is not a good economic steward. He has no principles worth talking about when it comes to rule of law and constitution. And because you're like, ooh, shiny fucking Starship, Elon Musk. I can't believe you're an Elon Musk glazer. Really?
I don't like Elon Musk as a person. I think he's terrible. As a matter of fact, I think one of the things that's terrible about him is the fact that he's willing to work with a fucking pedo after finding out he's a pedo. But anyways,
and Vance isn't.
No, Vance is the same. I think that they're both like indictable characters. But at the same time, if Elon Musk builds a fucking Starship that can travel 17,000 kilometers an hour, cross the globe within 90 minutes, and carry 150 metric tons, that's worth some level of respect. And by the way, you're going to need people like that for the project. And let's talk about Gavin Newsom real quick. Okay, Gavin Newsom, I'm happy he's abundance pilled, okay? And if he shuts the fuck up about guns and he's abundance pilled and that's what he hits on, then I'll probably vote for him over JD Vance. But it depends on what the left wing is doing. As an example, I am deeply fucking uncomfortable with the level to which you, Hutch, the Bulwark, Tim Miller, Kamala Harris, all these motherfuckers, I am uncomfortable to the point that you guys are willing to either glaze, socialize, normalize socialists, decommodification of basic human needs, and workers owning the means of production. I don't give a fuck if they're Democratic. They are anti-capitalist pieces of shit. And so the fact that you guys are like, we need to build a coalition between Conor, the science fiction guy who likes the free market, but he also likes individual freedom, freedom of conscience, and the Constitution of the United States. But we also need him to be okay with a fucking socialist. It's not going to happen. And if you run a socialist, or if you run somebody who's pandering to socialists, it's not going to fucking happen. Electorally, I want to punish you for that action. The same way that I electorally punished the right for normalizing Christian nationalists.
These guys, man.
Dude, hold on. I want you to understand.
Feudalists.
I view Hassan Piker and Nick Fuentes as the same guy. I view them as the same guy on opposite sides of the spectrum. That's genuinely how I view these people.
Okay. Do you view Mamdani the same as Nick Fuentes?
I view Mamdani as Hassan Piker in the closet.
So the answer is yes, therefore?
No, he has the shame to be in the closet. I view Mamdani as JD Vance.
Help me out there, because you're willing to vote for JD Vance but not Mamdani.
Because JD Vance doesn't come out and say, I hate Jews. He said, as a matter of fact, he's probably like a Zio shill. And he's also not a racist. He might be an anti-black racist, but he's not an anti-Indian racist. We know that. Yeah, I view JD Vance as number one, I'll go back to the fact that I think he's a political opportunist. But to the degree that he is like a post-liberal and anti-liberal, like because he said that before in like briefings and shit, to the degree that he's a post-liberal, I think that he is infinitely more tepid than Curtis Yarvin or Nick Fuentes. He is a tepid, palatable version of an extremist ideology. I think Mamdani is a tepid, palatable version of an extremist ideology.
Of someone like Fuentes.
Yeah, Fuentes is the extreme version. Hassan Piker is the extreme version.
Mamdani is Muslim.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, that seems to be pretty counter to Christian nationalism. Mamdani is pro-gay. Mamdani is not anti-Semitic. You think he is?
Yeah, I would say that. I think that's like populist opportunism, and also Hassan Piker is all those things. What about it?
I never want to hear another thing about anti-Semitism from people who take the position that you just did. I never want to hear another word about anti-Semitism from people who are going to make a comparison as between Fuentes, who is talking about the problems of world Jewry and how it's not an Israel problem, it's a Jewish problem. And, you know, to the extent that they support Israel, they should be sent out of the country. And basically,
to who? Are you going to say Mamdani?
Comparing to Mamdani or Hassan. When has Hassan said something even 1% of that?
Hassan was denying the on October 7, 2023, and saying that there's no evidence for them, despite reading a UN report that says that we have like eyewitness testimony, we have victim testimony, we have the autopsies of people who were shot in the back of the head and had their genitals burned, and we found a bunch of women tied to various stop signs in trees with their panties pulled down under their legs and their arms tied around these objects. And he was like, "Oh yeah, but they didn't get semen samples, so the rape didn't happen."
Okay, people who say that shit, like that you would, this quote, because I've heard this before, like the direct and circumstantial evidence point, which are really, really stupid points. There is direct evidence. Indirect evidence is only just like testimony of it, and there are people who testify to that effect. But I don't understand. So because he takes this view that these are the notion of mass as a tool of war or something. That's the claim, right? That this is like as a mass event, something like that, right? That this was a coordinated, attempted, volitional.
Yeah, he wants to say it's anecdotal.
Well, hang on a second. So you're saying that his view on that, which I don't know what he said, and I'm not here to defend people who do this kind of quibbling about direct circumstantial evidence, and I would need to have the video proof of this or that, which by the way I would consider to be circumstantial. I basically think anything that isn't like direct witness testimony is circumstantial evidence. People will say things like only direct evidence matters when some of the strongest evidence, DNA is circumstantial evidence. It's not direct evidence. It's circumstantial evidence. So all that shit is fucking stupid. But you're comparing that view, which has to do with like, have they proved to your satisfaction or to Hassan's satisfaction the existence of mass coordinated as an intentional tool and strategy on October 7th? And you're saying that is comparable in terms of its anti-Semitism to Nick Fuentes' explicit anti-Semitism regarding world Jewry.
Even we could even shift it away from anti-Semitism, because I don't think I moral frog about anti-Semitism too much, because oftentimes it's like conflated with anti-Zionism. So I don't even know if I moral frog about it that much. The terrorism apologia that Hassan Piker does is repugnant enough. I don't even I'm really not trying to shift away from the argument. If you want a concession that Nick Fuentes is a virulent anti-Semite, and that is categorically different to be an anti-Zionist, and you think that anti-Zionism is philosophically more defensible, and that Hassan Piker denying mass but maybe making evidentiary concessions to anecdotes of that Nick Fuentes is worse in reference to anti-Semitism, I could concede that in my point.
Yeah, it's not even arguable, right? Because look at all the comments when. By the way, I'm not Jewish.
It doesn't matter.
I just want to say I'm not Jewish. I was baptized in the Catholic Church. I'm Hispanic, and notwithstanding that, whenever there are people reply or saying "shut up, Jew," things like that, do I think where are those coming from? Are the "shut up, Jew" comments or the Happy Merchant memes? Are they coming from the super far left communities, most of the time they're coming from the Groyper communities. And this guy is actually
I feel
close
like
to power
on this issue, though.
He's close to power in a way
I feel like you're blind on this issue. Right. Sorry, real quick. They're not going to say "shut up, Jew." They're going to say "shut up, Zionist." But then within the same breath, or the same paragraph, or the same video essay, they're going to say 80 to 90% of Jews, and 98% of Jews in Israel, and 80 to 90% of Jews in the diaspora are Zionists. So they're not saying all Jews, because they have 20% of the diaspora population and 2% of the Israeli population that are anti-Zionist. So they're not talking about all Jews. They're just talking about 80% of the diaspora population and 98% of the Israeli population. And they'll use that as an invective insult.
So, I mean, that's interesting, because I heard you just then say that JD Vance is like a Zio shill. Did you say that?
I think so.
Was that you? Was that you? Was that
sure most of the Trump admin is Zio shell?
Was that you signaling a dislike and disdain for Jewish people and conflating that issue? What were you doing there?
No, I think that there's an actual. I think there's a legitimate difference between Zionism and being a Jew. And I think that the 20%, if you called that 20% of diaspora Jews and that 1 to 2% of Israeli Jews Zionists, they would actually just definitionally not be the case. So I think there actually is a categorical difference. And then also Zioshil, what I'm trying to communicate there is that there are things that Israel does that are definitely criticizable, that would be criticized of any other nation state. And yet it seems like there are Americans who are either paid or politically incentivized to never criticize the state of Israel. And that's what I just want to be clear.
So when you call someone a Zioshil, you're not being anti-Semitic. That's correct? Yeah,
I muted myself so I didn't have the ability to answer. I don't care if I'm being anti-Semitic.
I didn't ask if you're being. I didn't ask if you cared about being anti-Semitic.
I don't think I'm being anti-Semitic. I wouldn't be surprised if some people called me anti-Semitic.
But to be honest, your view is that you're not being anti-Semitic when you.
I don't think I have an antipathy. I don't think I have an antipathy towards Jewish people. No. If anything, I'm like a philo-Semite. I probably give Jews too much of a pass.
Is this better now? Hello, testing 1 2 3 1 2 3.
Yeah, you sound good now.
Okay, so where were we? What I was saying was, you don't think you're being anti-Semitic when you call the sitting vice president a Zioshil, and if Hassan were to say the same thing about, just say for instance, Ethan Klein, or to say for instance Chuck Schumer, do you think that would be anti-Semitic under your lights?
Kind of. And the reason why specifically, if you'll indulge me a second, Ethan Klein has said that he wants a two-state solution. He said that he doesn't endorse the war crimes of the IDF. He said that he wants the IDF to withdraw from Gaza and the West Bank. He says that he not only condemns...
JD Vance has criticized Israel. JD Vance has said that we need to take a more America First policy, and that we can't be pushed around. He has praised Donald Trump for not being pushed around by Israel. JD Vance has signaled in the past that he's more critical of Israel than Donald Trump. So you can make all these...
Hypothetically, or are you saying this actually?
These are all true things I just said.
Number one, I don't know if those things are true. Number two, I would say that Ethan Klein, in my opinion, has about the only... It's not even a sane position, because he actually has argued in the past that he thinks that West Bank settlers, even civilians, even women and children, can be treated as military targets. So I actually think that Ethan Klein actually has almost an extreme he's an
anti-Zionist,
of an anti-Israel position that you can have while still supporting the general existence of Israeli state. And so I think calling him a Zioshel is, I think it's fucked up, regardless of whether or not you call it anti-Semitic. Actually, you know what? I do think it's anti-Semitic. You're taking somebody who's potentially an ally and you're calling them as bad as someone who wants to annex the West Bank and annex Gaza. Yeah, I think that's fucked up, hypocritical, anti-Semitic. Yes.
I don't think that's entailed by saying Zioshil. I mean, I think that people might mean different things when they say Zioshil, or calling people, supporters of Zionism or whatever. But
right, it's like getting paid in order to espouse beliefs that you might not believe. It's like a perverse incentive.
What's your evidence that JD Vance is getting paid by Zionists?
He might not be getting paid, but I think there's political incentive.
I mean, Trump is getting paid by Zionists. Would you call
Trump definition? Sorry, real quick. I just want to make sure that I'm using this word correctly. An accomplice of a hawker, gambler, or swindler who acts as an enthusiastic customer to entice or encourage others. So yeah, I don't even necessarily know if it's like purely financial.
I might describe Trump as a Zionist. I might describe Trump as a Zionist shill in that he's literally taking money. Okay, so we agree that there's if you are taking money. So, for example, if you're taking a great deal of money from pro-Zionist institutions, you would be comfortable calling that Zionist shillism for any politician?
I would say money or political clout, because I don't think it just has to be money. But yeah, if you're like an enthusiastic Israeli propagandist who cannot bring yourself to criticize the state of Israel, then yeah, I think that a Zio-shill, while it might be a derogatory term, it's probably an accurate term.
Okay. Well, this is such a derail from the broader point that you could take this view that JD Vance is less racist or just as racist, or like put the racism shit to the side, and put the shillism thing to the side, and put the technology stuff to the side, on just the basic premise of ordered liberty and the Constitution and rule of law. Shouldn't that be like our guiding star? And the mere fact that you're willing to abide someone who is demonstrably proven, not just in your fantasies about Mao and your fantasies about Stalin and your fantasies about the gulags that are imminently upon us in the United States of America, but actually proven in multiple different instances that they're willing to totally disregard the rule of law. The fact that you're willing to abide these people and consider them in the future as potential votes, that can't be correct on your view that the liberty and framework of this country matter the most.
If you were okay, so number one, I think that you classifying threat to liberty as like a decent motivator, I think that's true. I think that would actually be my calculus. My legitimate calculus would be, who is the bigger threat to American liberty, and then I would actually make a calculus, like a consequentialist calculation.
In what world does that Newsom over JD Vance?
Okay, we should probably make this a totally separate discussion. But I would say that you guys just don't believe in the power of the Second Amendment. You just don't. You just don't believe in the power of the Second Amendment. And if you check Federalist 29, if you check Federalist 46, I would strongly recommend before we have a discussion about the Second Amendment, you should read Federalist 29 and Federalist 46.
Why do you value the Second Amendment over the First Amendment? Like, listen,
because
Vance is supporting the policies of like shipping people off because of their support for Palestine. Vance is in support of impeaching judges and removing them because they come to decisions that he doesn't agree with on the law. He has argued as recently as this year that at a certain point we have to start talking about not listening to the courts when they're ordering the president. So why is the Second Amendment getting this extra bit of Conor protection than like basic First Amendment, basic rule of law, basic structure of our government? Like, you understand that the only reason that any of the rights are able to be applied is if we have a robust separation of powers. You can't raise a Second Amendment claim if you don't have access to courts that can actually stop the excesses of whatever government you're talking about. So as a starting principle, you should be more concerned with separation of powers, the taking of complete unilateral control by one branch, and the distortion of the framework, right? The Bill of Rights are an afterthought. The Bill of Rights aren't ratified at the time of the framing of the Constitution. Right? It's an afterthought. It's a concession that is later implemented. What's more important to this country, even than the individual rights guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, is the framework and structure of the Constitution, which JD Vance, that is the structure that he's attacking. He's attacking it in terms of the checks by Congress in their appropriation powers. You talk about the Department of Education. Yeah, you think it's based, but it's a total abdication.
I don't, by the way. I don't think totally gutting the DOE is based.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying that people in the right wing do.
Okay, but JD Vance is ignoring, along with the Trump administration, the commands of Congress. They're ignoring the commands of courts, and they're saying, "Hey, we might not even listen to it." That's a bigger threat to your Second Amendment than any legislation that a Democratic president's going to propose. Because at a bare minimum, a Democratic president who proposes that legislation, they're going to listen to the courts when they strike them down, similar to what Biden did with the student loan stuff. And so you should be much more concerned, if you're really Second Amendment pilled, you should be much more concerned about a government that's willing to ignore court orders. Because how else are your Second Amendment rights going to be vindicated?
Okay. And actually, this gets to like a structural belief issue that I think will remain a gulf among between us, because I don't think I'm changing my opinion anytime soon. I doubt you're changing your opinion anytime soon. Okay. So what I heard, and I'm really not trying to straw man you, is you're saying that the threats to governance, procedure, the Constitution, the way our system works, that is more important than a right enshrined, decades after the formation of the country? Like, weren't we under the Articles of Confederation?
No. So it was like
before the Bill of Rights?
It was very.
How long were we under the Articles of Confederation?
Yeah, the Articles of Confederation lasted for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that, maybe a decade. I'm not sure. So
I thought it was like
the Constitution was ratified in 88 or 1788, and it was enforced in 1789. And so 8 years there. So
okay, sorry,
but this is all after. This is
plural, not a single.
No. This is all after. First comes the Constitution, and close in time in the first Congress, they passed the Bill of Rights and they ratify those. But what I'm trying to say is, they're just, listen to Scalia on this point, because it is important. They're just words on paper. What are rights, right? Like, rights don't mean anything. They don't mean anything if they're not enforced by actors and if they're not respected. And so in order to have First Amendment, Second Amendment, due process, all this stuff, these guarantees, it presupposes a robust structure of separation of powers where the government is going to actually adhere to their promises on paper. And that is the foundation that someone like J.D. Vance and Trump is attacking. Maybe we're not disagreeing
on this.
Okay, but that's why it's more important to protect that than it is any particular right.
Okay. Let me address the Second Amendment right after what I address next. Okay. So you're saying that Donald Trump and JD Vance have, and I agree, attacked the foundational social contract by which we abide, and I agree. And effectively, what I view the Republic as, and what I view liberal democracy and the United States government and our society as, is, and I don't think you'll disagree with this. I think you actually just said this, that it's effectively a game. Right. We're playing a social game together, and the game only functions as long as we have willing players. And the problem with the game right now is that Donald Trump, JD Vance, Steve Miller, and a whole bunch of other people are saying, we are not going to follow the rules of the game.
Wait, and not just them. Yes.
Until you force us to at the barrel of a gun / court.
And it's not just them. Peter Thiel explicitly said, like, we're in a post-constitutional era. I don't believe in democracy. I think it's stupid. These are people that you're potentially endorsing as the next set of leaders, at least better than someone like Gavin Newsom, who explicitly reject.
I wouldn't endorse Thiel, but if you also watch Thiel's interviews, because I've watched a couple of them now, he's exhausted by the DC game. He doesn't have the will to power. He doesn't have the desire to be a fascist dictator. He's actually like, in the interview with Ross Douthat, he actually says, yeah, man, I back Trump super hard. I back JD Vance super hard, but DC has frustrated me so much in how little we've been able to accomplish that I'm not even sure if I'm interested in politics anymore. I think I'm going to go back to my little fucking hovel and play with my toys.
You say that, though. He still has his contracts. He still has Palantir. He still has all that stuff. But
sure.
That said, maybe it's not Thiel. None of these people believe in the rules of the game as you've described. They all believe that those systems need to be ignored. Maybe you can abuse them to the extent that it's beneficial for you, and you can like cite them as a token thing, but they don't care about those rules. And that is the key difference between someone like Gavin Newsom and, like, what's the worst thing that Gavin Newsom has done in terms of rule respecting? He didn't follow his own COVID regulation and like when to have dinner. Like, name another. What else?
Let me get to the Second Amendment part then. Because this is the through line. The Second Amendment is the when people stop playing the game, private arms are how we build a new game. So eliminating private arms, the only reason why, like, and this is actually like a libertarian conservatarian perspective. The only reason why, and of course you guys, well, not the only reason why. The reason why people would be wanting to take away private arms in their entirety or regulate them to the point that they were not a factor is if they no longer wanted to play the game. And so this is one of the things that like Democrats frustrate the fuck out of me on is like, why are you talking about, like, for instance, Adam Schiff, why are you talking about an assault weapons ban when you think we're on the verge of a fascist takeover? What the fuck are you talking about? Because arms is how you reset the game and play a new game. So why are you taking away that tool? That's the dumbest thing possible. And until left-wingers and liberals, because I actually think that they're to some degree like allergic to violence, until you realize that righteous violence is what makes our game work, and until you're willing to engage in righteous violence to perpetuate the game and to start a new game, God forbid it all falls apart, we are not on the same moral foundations.
So you think that the fact that people like Schiff are targeting gun rights by doing this assault weapons ban, I'll have you know who else supported an assault weapons ban? Kamala Harris. But you made a calculation. You made a calculation that the threat posed... I didn't think
she was going to get it through.
Right. So why isn't that operative now? Why isn't that operative under a proposed President Newsom? That because I'm going to
evaluate it as it comes, and ideally by having conversations with people like you. I know I only have 100 live viewers, although, like I said, they're incredibly generous. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. The goal, of course, is to be a 6-figure or maybe eventually like a 7-figure creator, right? That's the goal. The goal is to be Tucker Carlson. The goal is to be Destiny. The goal is to be Hassan Piker. The goal is to not just have internet influence, but to have conversations with real power brokers and change their minds about the way they think about the world. So with Gavin Newsom, you're just going to have to accept the fact that I think that liberals are wrong. They are incorrect in what power is and how to wield it. And so until you guys shift my way, I'm not going to say that I'm one of you. I'm not one of you.
No. That's not even what I'm asking. That's not even what I'm asking. Put aside, I know that I'm not going to convince you.
I can do a pragmatic vote for Newsom.
I'm not saying that you could, right? What I'm saying is you're not taking a vote for JD Vance off the table.
No, I'm not.
In a way that you would take a vote for Trump off the table.
Yeah.
That is what I take to be the confusion. The confusion is thinking that
I understand the confusion because you're saying that JD Vance would have helped him do the thing that I say is the reason why I can't support Trump.
Yes, among other things and worse things. And he has worse people, like arguably worse people in his ear.
Number one, I don't think it's going to be worse people. But they have yes. These people, through incompetence, have killed hundreds of thousands or millions of people. Weirdly enough, that was also true of Bush. So the thing about it is, like,
millions of people because of Bush. What? I don't understand.
Hundreds of thousands, if not millions. So in Bush, through the war on terror, arguably killed hundreds of thousands of people. So my whole point is that, yeah, it's going to be an evaluative criteria. It's going to be, how far left is the left going? Does the left understand power? Is the left willing to support the Constitution, win, lose, or draw? Are they trying to attack American liberty? Do they foundationally misunderstand the country? These are all going to be questions that I'm asking myself. And then what's the potential harm of the left? And then I'll be asking, what is the potential harm of the right? And by the way, maybe I'm being naive. I'm really hoping this is the bottom. I'm really hoping this is the bottom for the right wing.
Nope.
Really hoping.
It's going to get worse before it gets better. Way worse.
You think a Vance president... Sorry, real quick. If Donald Trump died... I don't even know if you believe this. If Donald Trump died tonight from a stroke, natural causes, passes out, Vance is president, you think JD Vance would be a worse president than Donald Trump?
The only reason I think that maybe not is because he lacks the kind of zeal that Trump commands. But
that's what I said. Yeah,
that's the only reason in which I would be like, okay, I'll take just kick Trump out and let's deal with Vance.
I also think he's smarter.
But that's what I mean. I think he's more malicious. Trump is almost predictable. Trump is predictable, and he's easy to charm, and he's kind of an idiot. Vance, I think, he overinflates his intelligence. I think that he's overrated in terms of how cerebral he is or whatever. But in general, I'm not confident that this is a person who I know how they work. That I know, and to the extent that I know how they work, it's like.
As far as I know, the J.D. Vance's Trojan horse into the presidency was largely because he's a political opportunist. If you look at him, he shifted his ideology 2 or 3 times over the past 2 decades, depending on what was politically expedient. As far as I know, as a Trojan horse for the Tealites, his job was tech deregulation and leaving Silicon Valley alone and maybe some tax breaks. That's what I think. And Thiel already got his Palantir contracts. He already got all this kind of stuff. So my question is, that damage is done. What is on JD Vance's agenda?
The destruction of the Republic.
The what?
The destruction of the Republic. This is a comment from Doobie real quick.
He explicitly wants to destroy the Republic. To what end? For what benefit?
So first off, this is what Doobie says, $50 super chat, appreciate it. Conor wants to return to post 9/11 warmongering neocon headassery. Trump isn't ideological. Vance is full on dark enlightenment, technocratic nutbag, and he's far more intelligent. He'd do more damage. That's what Doobie says. You can respond to that or what I'm about to say. So I think that JD Vance is interested in power. I think that he's interested in breaking apart the constraints on that power. And he's interested in accumulating more wealth and authority for himself and for his friends. That's what he's interested in. That's obviously what's motivating him, is to wear this facade for the purpose of getting more power. And him getting more power after Trump has kind of opened Pandora's box, I think he would actually potentially have the wherewithal and dedication and patience in a way that Trump does not, to successfully destroy the remaining guardrails of the Republic.
So sorry, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm kind of hearing this. You think that it's power for power's sake?
I think it's power for the sake of power, but not just of himself, of also his friends, and promoting this kind of conservative vision that is a little bit more in the weeds, intelligentsia based folk like Curtis Yarvin. He is a supporter and follower of Curtis Yarvin, right? I think is
talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
So this is what I've had a conversation with Yarvin, and I'm vaguely familiar through people in chat. So what I think Yarvin believes, based off of my conversation and also what I've heard of his writings, and you can correct me, or somebody in chat can correct me, is effectively that there was an existent power structure within the pre-Enlightenment society, and it was relatively ordered, where you have God at the top, king beneath that, the feudal lords, all that kind of stuff, the peasant class, this, that, the other, and you had the church and you had the family. And so that social order, while, let's be real, medieval Europe was quite chaotic, it formed the cathedral of hierarchy, effectively. And what's happened in the Enlightenment era is that those things have been supplanted. Where God was, there's just a void. Nobody really specifically has to worship God. There's kind of this moral ephemeralness at the top. There's the presidency and the secular governments, but that doesn't necessarily.
Wait, can I pause right there? I just want to pause right there, because you're using the term the cathedral that Yarvin uses. My understanding is that they do view that there's a cathedral in these modern societies, and that is the media, that is the universities, that is the the actors, Hollywood, and the establishment political class,
and that's replaced the old order,
right? And what they want to do is replace those people with themselves for the benefit of their elite class, and to make them the feudal lords over this tech anarchic society. And they want to get rid of democracy. Curtis Yarvin does not believe in a Republican form of government. Peter Thiel explicitly does not believe in a Republican form of government. J.D. Vance is buoyed and ideologically related to this emerging tradition. So do I think that J.D. Vance has designs that are in line with his ideological goals of power accumulation to his elite oligarch friends? Yes. That is an existential threat.
But hold on. The ideal, of course, would be totally unmoored from the Constitution of the United States. It would be to destroy the Constitution of the United States and eliminate even representative democracy. Okay, that would be the plan. But my point is, I don't think there's any kind of political will, because these people talk about political will and people and populism and all that kind of stuff. They talk about that shit all the time as well. I don't think there's any kind of political will to reinstantiate a monarchy. I don't think there's any political will to actually repeal the 19th Amendment or the 14th Amendment. I don't think there's any political will to repeal the First Amendment of the United States. And I think if they ever tried, that would create such a catastrophic political backlash that they would be swamped and kicked out of power almost immediately. I think our republic is powerful enough to kick those people out.
But it's but it's not powerful enough to withstand arguably unconstitutional gun law.
No. So this is like this is a difference in what I'm talking about.
Okay,
is that because I don't think the Tealites are capable of realizing exactly what you said. I don't think they're capable of destroying the Republic of the United States, and I don't think there's any popular will for it. I think that they would govern infinitely more technocratically, where effectively what they would do is they would carve out a deregulatory niche for Thiel and for Musk as tech feudal lords to have reduced taxes and government subsidies.
Yeah, that's not desirable, Connor. That's not desirable. That's not desirable. Gavin wouldn't do that. And the thing he would do.
Wait, why would you give a fuck if Elon Musk fucked off to Mars? Why would you give a fuck if Peter Thiel created gay cat boys that
they're gonna spend all of? So one, they're not gonna be successful. They're gonna spend all of our money and time trying to fail at that, and they're going to waste all of the potential things that we can do right now. And basically accumulate wealth for themselves at the cost of everything that we care about. And we have to basically live according to the whims of these egomaniacal crab people.
I'm sorry. If I added up all of the subsidies and tax breaks for Elon Musk, how much of the federal budget am I going to hit?
The percentage? That's not... Yeah, it's marginal compared to the overall budget.
It's going to be pissed in the ocean. Yeah. So can we assume that
how much do you think a Mars project is going to cost?
What?
How much do you think a Mars project is going to cost? And even if it were just $100 billion or $200 billion, fuck that. That's all of the USAID budget. That's more than it. What's the USAID budget?
It was $10 billion for PEPFAR and USAID.
$30 billion. I'm sure. And let's see. What's the budget for Starship? Budget for Starship. Starship. Elon. It's $5 billion in research and development to date. $5 billion to actually get to Mars with a human colony. Right. This is just on researching the Starship program. Right. You want to talk about getting to Mars?
That's still piss in the ocean. Look. And by the way, we might not agree on whether or not we should be an extraplanetary species, but that aside, okay? So for you're saying that you think that the Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, whoever, they're going to be trying to destroy the Constitution of the United States and fray it so badly that effectively we live in a new feudalist society, which I don't see the franchise going away. I don't see the Constitution of the United States going away. What I'm saying when it comes to Gavin Newsom, let's say Gavin Newsom comes up with some fucking wealth tax.
Wait, can you pause? Why didn't this convince you on Trump? I don't see the franchise going away with Trump, so I'll just vote for him. A lot of people did that.
Yeah, a lot of people did do that. A lot of people in the center right did do that.
Why didn't you?
Because I care about international affairs. I care about Ukrainians. I care about Africans. I care about believe it or not, I care about republicanism. I care about whether or not republicanism and liberal democracy get spread across the world. And Trump was antithetical to that project.
JD Vance is a nativist.
Once again, like, dude, are you blind to the fact that you have pieces of shit on your side? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you can't conceptualize of a left-winger so nefarious that a right-winger might be preferable.
Well, the one left-winger that I know you'd vote for JD Vance over is Mamdani.
I would vote for JD Vance over Mamdani. Do you know who I would vote for over JD Vance automatically, even though he's a staunch gun guy or anti-gun guy?
Who?
Mark Kelly.
You make no sense. You're going off vibes. You're going off vibes, and you're reinventing a framework to make sense of your this bullshit. What are you talking about? Because he's a fucking former military guy. That's enough to charm you.
Not just because he's a former military guy. Exactly because what he's been doing over the past 72 to 96 hours. Okay, Mark Kelly took a principled stance against the Trump administration. He told the military, hey, you might be asked to do you might be given illegal orders, and I want you to disobey those. That is your job. That is your duty through court-martial or death. It is your job to follow the Constitution of the United States over the President of the United States. That is just a statement of fact.
Yeah, and who's attacking Mark Kelly? Who's attacking Kelly?
I'm going to glaze Mark Kelly. And what happened after that is Donald Trump said anybody who participated in the Seditious Six PR stunt deserves capital punishment. The Secretary of War said, I'm going to call you back into service and I'm going to make you do a uniform inspection and I'm going to put you in front of a court martial and I'm going to take away your rank and I'm going to embarrass you and I'm going to fuck you over. And you know what Mark Kelly said? He said, fuck you. That's what he said. He didn't back down. He didn't sanitize it. He didn't make it polite. He said that his oath to the Constitution of the United States is greater than any pressure that the President of the United States or the Vice President or the media establishment or or anybody could put on him. And as a result, he prioritizes the Constitution and his oath to the Constitution of the United States that he served 30 years in order to do it. He stood on business and he told the Trump administration to go fuck itself. That's the kind of balls that we've needed, not just from Democrats. That's the kind of balls that we've needed from Republicans. And in my opinion, he's one of the few people who has actually stood on business within our representative body. So while I will admit that Gabby Giffords is a staunch anti-gun advocate, I would admit that he is probably anti-gun and he might even say the assault weapons ban shit. If you're saying that JD Vance is a tealite neo-monarchist who's threatening the Constitution of the Republic of the United States, what Mark Kelly did in the past 96 hours overrides anything. Overrides almost anything that I could see doing. I don't think he would be a socialist or a social democrat or any of that bullshit either.
He would vote for Medicare for all, but that's not so. You would be like, but that's not social.
It's not technically socialism. Maybe we could get away with it. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, so to that extent, then Mamdani wouldn't be socialist either, because the only difference between him, the policies.
I think he's hiding his power level.
Okay, right. He's lying. Okay, so I'm glad that you're beaming with joy and pride at Mark Kelly's bravery at standing up and doing the right thing. I'm so glad about that. Who from the whole country, who's attacking Mark Kelly? Can you name some people who are attacking Mark Kelly?
All of the Republicans right now, except for 2 or 3 quiet people.
And would that include JD Vance, who said that what they did was illegal? JD Vance is attacking Mark Kelly. So look at this, and let me finish this. Look at what Conor is trying to tell you. He's trying to tell you, I'm willing to put aside all of Mark Kelly's horrible policies on guns, which before was like, I had to really consider gun control as opposed to fundamental opposition to the Republican system. I'm willing to look at past because he's so brave in defending what the military is supposed to stand for and the principles of order, liberty, and no man being above the law. So he sells you that and saying, that lets me overlook all of the negative baggage of Mark Kelly. Okay? But he doesn't have that same response in the negative to the very people who are attacking Mark Kelly, namely Trump and JD Vance, saying that what they're doing is criminal and illegal. So why is it that your intuition and your pride is bolstered so much that you're willing to overlook these otherwise disqualifying positions of Mark Kelly, but the attack which triggers this pride isn't enough for you to do the opposite with respect to those who are on the offense in this illegal sedition accusation? Tell me that.
Yeah. Okay. So because once again, what is it? Evaluations of personality. I think that 99% of politicians aren't people. I think they're avatars of ideology. Okay. Mark Kelly, I think, is a person. I think he's a human being. I think he's probably, based off of his actions and his history, I think he's a man of honor. And I think that if he was trying to pass like legislation that I disagreed or whatever, he would be doing it from like a principled belief that he earnestly believed that this was the right thing. But also he's rooted in the Constitution of the United States to the point of death. Okay. He thinks that the Constitution of the United States is worth killing for. He thinks the Constitution of the United States and the free society that we live in is worth dying for. And he's proven it through his service. So yeah, I'm going to take that massively into account. Also, because he's a warrior, because he's a former warrior, because he's a fighter pilot, because he's an astronaut, because he's gone into danger, I think that I probably could sit down with Mark Kelly and we could talk about technocratic gun policy. And it wouldn't be this F-slurred, liberal, soy, complete misunderstanding of power and politics.
And you couldn't sit down with Newsom.
He probably does understand power. He probably does understand weapons. He probably does understand the balance of power between the federal government and civilian populace.
And you couldn't sit down with like Newsom or Tim Walz, who's also the kind of military type guy.
No, because Tim Walz and Gavin Newsom have both made public statements that they don't understand power. They just don't.
I don't know what you're referencing. They don't understand power.
I'm referencing the fact that fucking Tim Walz thought that it was a good idea in order to show his firearms chops by going out in an orange vest with a 5-round shotgun in order to shoot ducks or
that shows he doesn't understand power. What are you talking about?
He doesn't even understand the fight. Dude, you have to understand how much of the right wing is rooted in the culture of firearms, and you have to understand how antithetical that was. You can say, understand. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm not even talking about a culture that you're a part of. I am telling you.
I've shot guns.
Oh, he slung a shotgun over his shoulder. He put on an orange vest and went quail hunting. Isn't he one of you? No, he's not. Oh, Sean Ryan gifted Gavin Newsom a SIG P365 macro on his podcast, and Gavin Newsom talked about how he went shooting a couple of times with a 10-round magazine. No, that doesn't show me that Gavin Newsom.
Okay, you have a different you're using private language, because when people say they don't understand power, I usually don't think the first thing like they don't understand gun culture. But to you, power analysis and understanding power means following the niceties or the customs and norms or the safety instructions of gun culture and gun enthusiasts. That is a bizarre
thing. I think power is often, very often, probably 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10. I think power is predicated off of like a understanding of violence.
Like
we are a collaborative species. We are also a competitive species, and when collaboration ends, you have to be capable of violence.
So when you were saying
if you don't understand violence, then you don't understand politics.
So you would say something like Conor McGregor, he understands power more than Gavin Newsom.
No, because he doesn't know shit about guns because he's Irish. He also has an 80 IQ.
Oh, shit. Okay. So let me change it up again. We'll say Dustin Poirier, he understands power in a way that Gavin Newsom never will.
I don't. Is Dustin Poirier another MMA guy?
Yes.
Okay. Again, I don't give MMA guys a lot of credit when it comes to IQ.
This is so weird. This is such a leap. I think the better explanation, it is a leap. The better explanation is you think that Mark Kelly's kind of like a badass, like fucking masculine type guy, and Tim Walz kind of like this soy little dad who hugs children.
Let's cut the bullshit. Let's cut the bullshit. What do you think power is?
It depends on the context in which you're using it. When we're talking about
political power, what do you think political power is?
Yeah, an understanding of, and so an understanding of power, I take that to be a comprehension and apprehension of what it takes to get and your desires enforced in society.
Okay. And how do you enforce your desires in society?
Through various different mechanisms, depending on whatever governmental system you have, including, passing laws, ordering people with guns, getting money extracted. There's very different ways in which it's a broad concept, and different governments sort of enforce the desires of the leader in different ways.
Okay, so when those mechanisms fail, what enforces those mechanisms?
If the mechanisms fail, I think by definition, there's a contradiction there. If a mechanism fails, how do you enforce a mechanism that's failed? Do you mean, how do you enforce those?
If somebody resists arrests or doesn't pay their taxes willingly, how do you get them to pay their taxes? How do you get them incarcerated and in front of a judge?
You force them.
Okay, so we at least got there. Okay, so force. Okay,
Yeah, but it doesn't require a specific knowledge of the ways in which force is applied at the micro level. It would, that's not the sort of means of power, or the analysis that we're talking about, or I didn't understand it you'd be talking about, is power in the sense of operational capacity and use of firearms directly. Usually when we're talking about politicians and we're speaking of power, we're talking more of the institutional power, or the ability to get people who do know how to do that thing to work for you. We have a lot of fatties and old people and people who never seen a gun or held a gun are able to wield political power, right? Like Nancy Pelosi wielded political power. She didn't need to know the 5 gun safety rules or whatever.
Sure. But I think Nancy Pelosi and any politician, and this is actually a frustration that I have with anti-gun people across the entirety of the political spectrum, is that ultimately, at the end of the day, if everything falls apart, then you have to deal with the micro levels of force. So when you're talking about taxes not coming in, you have to send law enforcement in order to enforce taxation. When people aren't obeying legislation, you have to send law enforcement in order to enforce it. If you're being invaded, you have to have a military that repels an invasion. If you have a riot, or if you have anything like that, then you have to have some form of security apparatus, whether that's militia or whether that's law enforcement.
Granted. I'll grant that.
When collaboration fails, you have to understand force. And what I think is missing from the private arms component is that, again, I would recommend you read Federalist 29 and you read Federalist 46.
I've read all the Federalist papers.
Hold on, I want to finish this. This is important.
Mm-hmm.
The whole conception of the Second Amendment, the whole conception of Federalist 29 and Federalist 46 is that we are a society that is capable of collaboration and competition, and power must be balanced. Power cannot be concentrated in an individual institution. Power cannot be collected in a single political body or even a single security apparatus. Power must check power. And so the ultimate check against government power is an intelligent, educated, armed, capable populace. And what it sounds like when liberals talk about gun control, they're not saying, hey, let's become more competent. Let's become more educated. Let's be more capable of force. Let's understand force and violence more desperately. It's more of, I want to ignore this part of the human condition because I don't like it, because it's uncomfortable. And the fact that we have people in power like Gavin Newsom, the fact that we have people in power like Joe Biden, Mr. Put 2 buckshot rounds through your front door so the bad guy doesn't come in, they don't understand the micro level of violence, and therefore they misapply the macro level of violence. Sorry, real quick. When Joe Biden says, oh, you think private arms are going to do anything? You have to compete with F-15s. He doesn't understand violence. That's the leader of the free world. That's important. So yeah, I think Mark Kelly understands violence. And I think that Gavin Newsom wants to create a more miseducated population. So if there is a right winger who understands these things and is going to have better technocratic policy, I'm going to vote for them. If you want me to vote in some fucking soy-wristed F-slur who doesn't understand power, I'm not going to.
JD Vance, He understands power because he's had military training, I guess.
I mean, he's a former Marine. He's a pogue. But yeah, he probably understands the micro level of power relatively well.
In that he's able to wield a gun. And you don't think that...
not just that. He probably also
you know that Tim Walz was a firearms instructor. He was a sharpshooting instructor.
Okay. When you're talking about this, like, I could write you a fucking 10-page thesis paper on violence, like, right now. And we could talk about, like, small arms squad tactics, combined arms warfare. We could talk about close air support. We could talk about insurgency tactics. We could talk about infantry. We could talk about maneuver warfare. We could talk about logistics. We could talk about all this kind of shit. You don't need to know all that in order to be president, but you should understand at least the basic level of where force emanates from.
Got it. We have a big super chat from Doobie again. Power, this is a quote, power comes from the barrel of a gun. Mao and Conor, apparently. It seems like Conor thinks power lies with the people ordered to kill rather than the ones giving the orders. So he ironically doesn't understand power in the modern world. Response? No,
incorrect. Once again. So Game of Thrones parable. There's a sellsword, there's a priest, and there's a king. And the sellsword is told by the king, hey, kill the other two, and a merchant, if I didn't mention the merchant. The merchant says, hey, kill the other two. I'll give you more gold than you've ever seen in your entire life. The king says, kill the other two, and I'll give you lands, titles. I'll give you a princess. I'll give you endless amounts of political power. The priest says, kill the other two, and I'll make sure that you get into heaven. Who does the sellsword kill and why?
You asking me? I mean, I know the answer that Varys gives.
What? Okay, tell the chat the answer that Varys gives.
He says, power's a trick. He doesn't even answer the question. It's an illusion. It's a shadow on the wall.
No.
Power resides where one believes it resides.
Power is where people believe it resides.
Okay, but like,
if you believe it resides in the Constitution of the United States, it resides in the Constitution of the United States. If it resides with Donald Trump, it resides with Donald Trump. If it resides in the barrel of a gun, it resides in the barrel of a gun. The gun is the check against the other ones.
Oh, you think that's the conclusion that you draw from that? I mean,
scene? It's where
the sellsword. The sellsword has all the power. Isn't the whole point? No, isn't the whole point of that power?
Power is where you believe it to be,
right? So, and that's not necessarily the one who's has the sword or the gun in this case. Another super chat says, so Conor doesn't take into consideration character at all for JD, but gives it positive weight for Kelly. Why not evenly apply the judgment with respect to character?
Because then I would have to disclude 70%. I would have to disclude 70% of the Republican Party.
If that is the answer, so be it.
And also, I couldn't have voted for Kamala Harris.
Why? She has way better character than Trump.
She has way better character than Trump. That doesn't mean that she's necessarily a good person.
Okay. Doobie, another super chat, massive. He's speaking like he thinks Trump has no power because he probably couldn't handle a firearm. Just head assery. Should we give up voting for gladiator matches? Does violent steroid junkie understand power more than Biden? Thoughts?
I understand power more than Biden, yeah.
More than Doobie, certainly.
I think Doobie's not listening. I think Doobie's being a contrarian to be a contrarian. I think also he's super chatting you to piss me off. I think Doobie's playing mind games with me.
Well, here's what I'll say. I'm a little disappointed because, and I'll give my concluding thoughts. Let you do the concluding thoughts. If you have other stuff you want to talk about, I'm still free. I know that I've been keeping you way over time, and so I do really appreciate it. But my concluding thoughts are these. I think all the reasons that you decided that you couldn't stomach voting for Trump, not just that you would vote for Kamala, someone who you have profound misgivings about in terms of policy and, as you just mentioned, in terms of character, that all of those reasons are present in JD Vance, except perhaps this kind of cult of personality that Trump has as opposed to JD Vance. But maybe in replace of that cult of personality, you have additional negative criteria at JD Vance, namely the fact that he does seem to have like a dark vision for this country and is ideologically supportive of people who fundamentally do not believe in the thing that you were trying to preserve with your vote, the maintenance of the republic and its structure. And I just don't see any countervailing reason that would cause you to like be concerned about a Democrat in that context, such that you should say pretty much dispositively right now, I'm not really going to consider voting for JD Vance unless something insane happens. Namely, any kind of gun legislation that you're worried about the Democratic president is going to respect the courts if they decide it's lawful or not lawful. If the court, which is overwhelmingly conservative and supportive of gun rights, if they decide it's unconstitutional, you can bet your bottom dollar the Democrat is going to follow the law on that. And they're not going to. And even if they wouldn't do it, you have like the take the gun from my cold hands response from a lot of gun owners, which probably would be the response from a lot of gun owners. So all this issue of like practicality that don't concern you as much, I guess, with JD Vance, because you don't think that JD Vance could do additional significant damage to our constitutional system because the people wouldn't stomach it. That's there's parity on that on the gun front with respect to Democrats. And then separately, it just seems like an inconsistent standard in applying like Mark Kelly, whose policies I don't see any daylight between Mark Kelly and like Newsom, at least not any significant one. Maybe on Tim Walz, he's like a little bit more populist in some of his agenda and socially liberal, but that is things that I don't even think that you're necessarily against. Like he's talking about having universal lunches and even some form of public option, which I don't even know that you're principally against. It seems so odd to focus on like Mark Kelly's stand for rule of law, democracy, and really value those principles in his kind of defiant stand against Trump in this latest thing about not following illegal orders, but then to ignore who is on the other side of that and who is actually trying to take him to task for saying that. And it's Trump and JD Vance and all the normal people there. So in general, I just like, you are far too limited in your disgust of Republicans. And it's, I think, pretty exclusively on Trump. Not entirely, but you would forgive a lot of these people. You would forgive DeSantis, and you would forgive Haley, and definitely, and you would forgive JD Vance if, I guess, Newsom or some other normie Democrat who doesn't understand power, by which you mean how to fire a gun or gun culture. And that, I think, is so bizarre and ad hoc, and it seems to be constructed to support an unjustifiable vibes position. But I'll let you have the final word.
Thank you. So what I would say is,
Thank you for
I think that... Sorry, what's that?
I was just thanks for the memberships, but go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. And Doobie, thanks for the 50, by the way, back in the day. I think I already read that one. But the Kickstarter... Oh, okay, sorry. Doobie with the 50. It's called the Dark Enlightenment because it's explicitly opposed to the principles of the Enlightenment, anti-democracy, anti-equity, anti-equality, anti-liberalism, either rule versus the rule of the masses. Elite rule versus the rule of the masses. Okay, so what I would say is I don't like direct democracy. I'm not an egalitarian. I do like liberalism because I like maximal human freedom, but we do disagree on where that line is. And then I do think that elites should rule compared to the rule of the masses. So once again, like I might be more elitist than people want to give it credit for. Okay, so let's talk about this. I think that the political sands are shifting beneath our feet. I think that the Republican Party, at least 50 to 60% of the Republican Party has been co-opted by a economic populist right-wing demagogue, and it's reshaped the party in ways that are probably going to echo for the next, probably for decades. But that person in their cult of personality is losing power. And I expect more establishment types to reassert power once he's gone. What I mean by that is I expect the Republican Party after Trump's gone to be more technocratic. I expect the neoconservatives to be louder. I expect the libertarians to be louder. I expect the even within the right wing, the MAGA coalition, there are right-wing economic populists and there are tech feudal bros. It's a totally contradictory hodgepodge of schizophrenic ideas. And what's going to happen is when the king is gone, all these political factions are going to vie for power. I want to vie for power within that structure because I think that republicanism in its ideal form actually can be a just ruling, governing philosophy. One of the things that I have problems with liberals, and it even happened in your closing statement, is that I think that because you guys are so dismissive of force or power at the local level, at the individual level, that you don't understand how it's systematized. You don't understand how, so power is where people believe that it resides. But if government officials don't understand that actual force resides within the security establishment might rebel against the population and steal political power. Same thing where if you don't believe that like farmers don't have the capacity, the ability to effectively stop growing food, and they could fuck up your logistics chain, so they could fuck this, that, the other up. The whole point is power resides in many places and in many forms, and it is where we believe it to be. However, my point is that power is oftentimes best when it's diffused by many people. Where when you have 400 million guns, you got 330 million citizens. You probably have 3 to 10 million veterans who are sworn to the Constitution of the United States. You probably have 2 million active service members who are either reservists or not, who are loyal to the Constitution of the United States. That's how you perpetuate a republic. And what frustrates me about what Pisco said, what frustrates me about what many liberals say, is because violence is vulgar, because it's mundane, because it's for the plebiscites, because it's for stupid people who didn't get a college degree, they don't understand it. They don't understand it. They disdain it. They think it's like they think that it's for the barbarians who serve society. They don't understand how much of their society is predicated on violence, and so as a result, I think that ignorance is part of the reason why they also have disdain for the Second Amendment. I think it's why they have disdain for the Founding Fathers. I think it's why they have disdain for libertarians and to some degree, the liberal project. And I think that when you see a death by 1,000 cuts by left-wing people, it's often because of this misunderstanding of power. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next conversation about it. But once again, this is not something that I'm going to change on anytime soon. Oh, sorry, Mark Kelly versus JD Vance.
Yeah. No, Mark Kelly versus the other Dems.
Sure. Let me do Mark Kelly versus JD Vance, Mark Kelly versus the other Dems, and then let's close it out.
Yeah.
So Mark Kelly versus JD Vance. The reason why I would potentially pick JD Vance over another Democrat is because you guys are normalizing people like Mamdani. You're normalizing progressives and socialists and communists, and to some degree their talking points. I hear endless Hassan Piker apologia within even the liberal sphere. And so as a result, I'm wildly uncomfortable with you guys normalizing what I view as revolutionary leftists.
They're normalizing groypers. They're normalizing groypers. JD Vance is normalizing groyperism.
Yeah, I view it as a mirror. And so the lack of awareness that you guys have, where you seem to be normalizing extremism, I find repulsive, naive, stupid. So that's frustrating for me. And so if there was somebody who was listening to Hassan Piker, stealing Hassan Piker's talking points, being a social democrat in the streets, but being a socialist in the sheets, I'm going to pick a right winger, because you know what? In a techno-feudalist society, I'm still going to do okay. I'm a smart guy. I'm white. I'm cis. I'm het. I'm male. I'll do fine in techno-feudalist anarchic. I'll do fine in Ancapistan. You guys won't. Okay. So maybe you should present me with a better option. The better option, by the way, is Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly is somebody who's loyal to the Republic, loyal to the Constitution of the United States, understands power. If we disagree on gun legislation, I think that I would be able to talk to him in such a way that he would at least understand my perspective, whereas you guys are largely wholly ignorant of it. And as a result, I would obviously pick Mark Kelly on a personality basis, maybe not on a policy basis, but I do think that he would try to govern justly. I do believe him. I do think he's earnest. I do think he's taken risks for the Republic through his military service, through his astronaut career, through his public service as a senator, and through what he's done in the past 96 hours. I genuinely believe him to be an earnest and honorable man. And then finally, him versus other Democrats.
Yeah. No
offense. The path to hell is paved with good intentions. I like abundance liberalism. If Gavin Newsom becomes a gun centrist, abortion centrist, abundance lib, I'll vote for him. If he becomes a white guilt, CRT, DEI, progressive gun control advocate, I'm not going to vote for him. And that's up to you guys, not me. So, yeah.
Hey, Conor, thank you so much for postponing your conversation with Dan Pace.
Yep.
I really appreciate it. This is a huge issue, and we're going to have to return to it over time. Because I don't think, if this is true, what you're describing to me, and it's not just you trying to do a little virtue signal to the Republicans that may be watching you, I think that, yeah, you can't call yourself a Democrat. if you are open to voting for JD Vance on this basis, on this like what I think is a bizarre set of frameworks, like I'm concerned about your vote in the next presidential election, or even in the midterms. Frankly, it doesn't seem like you're taking the fight against Trump that seriously. If this is your position, and I think that by this logic, you'd have no problem voting for any given congressional Republican candidate for office. That is concerning to me. But what can you say? I said you would have the last word, so I'll let you respond to that.
Antifa, no, it's all good. To quote the great Antifa general Joseph R. Biden, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. Give me a good alternative. All right. Anyways, I'm gonna run. I got shit to do, but parasocial love to you and yours. And
happy Thanksgiving, bro. See you later.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Follow Conor. Follow Valor Media Networks and follow Counterpoints 40K. If you want to see Counterpoints' 40K takes, Counterpoints Politics, if you want to see Counterpoints' 40K takes, and Counterpoints Star Wars, if you want to see his Star Wars takes.
Yep, Counterpoints Sci-Fi, Counterpoints Star Wars, Counterpoints 40K, and Counterpoints Politics, and Valor Media Network. I know it's a lot of channels, but
you should just put all the politics in the 40K channel because it's the same thing.
I tried that; they didn't like it.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Much love. See you later.
See you, bud.
Well, that was interesting. That's deranged. It's so bizarre to support Kelly based on his stand on like this specific thing, right? On the statement about not following legal orders, because that's all premised on like following your duty, following the rule of law, respecting your obligations and your oaths. And JD Vance is like is on the offense against Mark Kelly, and he doesn't get like negative consideration for that, or not proportional negative consideration that Mark Kelly is getting positive consideration for it. Where I think intuitively we would think there's at least some parity there, that the overreach, which is necessitating the brave stand by Mark Kelly, that we would treat that in a similar degree of proportionality, the positive versus the negative there. I don't know if that makes sense. Turns out Conor doesn't have consistent principles that I can see. Well, every now and then I'll have like a great Conor conversation, and then I'll get this little inkling in my head. Like there's nothing specific. It's just like, I get the feeling that this motherfucker's going to vote for Ron DeSantis. And I just like, this motherfucker, there's something's up. I'm not liking the way he's moving right now. And then this comes out. Like we had a similar conversation in the run up to the 2024 election on Kamala versus Trump, where he's like, look, she's in favor of the assault weapons ban. Therefore, I don't think she should win. Now, he got over that after a while, but this is a alarming development. The whole powers knowing the 4 rules of gun safety meme. He really tried to finesse into thinking that was what he was talking about. I don't even know if he knew what he was trying to say there, but like he found a way to to explain. Gavin Newsom doesn't understand power. Tim Walz, he doesn't understand power. You know how I know? He wore a bright orange thing at a gun thing, and he held a shotgun in some kind of way. That's how I know he doesn't understand power. Huh? And he gets to be a lawyer? What a sick joke. There are persuadable people we need to focus on. No, listen, I understand that. I what I do here isn't necessarily like the best maximal time of convincing. I don't even know how convincing I am as a person. I like to give like arguments to people who maybe are more convincing. Like I think that a lot of people, because I can come across a bit smug to certain individuals, they just want to reject what I throw at them. Because I'll like raise my eyebrows and I'll be like sassy or whatever. So I don't know actually that I'm the most convincing person. Or to the extent that I'm convincing, it's in like retrospect. Oh, I guess Pisco had a point about that. Sometimes people will lie about the positions I had previously. I've actually seen some of that recently. Believe it or not. Giving me like the opposite position that I've held. I think I'm convincing to people who are already like sympathetic to what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say. But I don't think that in the moment I'm specifically convincing to my interlocutor. Because I'm pretty aggressive. And I just think that there's like a mental block for people to give ground in those contexts. But maybe to like an undecided person, maybe. But to specifically convince someone who... There is one example, I think, where I'm more affable on Tim Pool. I've had actually people reach out and be like, you convinced me on this. Before I was in favor, now I'm against. But I try to make an effort on Tim Pool to be like a little nicer. Though I still have a mission. But I don't know, like when I'm just being myself, that I'm like and sometimes I just get like obsessed with these arguments that we're having, and so I just it may not be the best, most efficient use of the time, but it's just what I like to do. Not a mental block, emotional. Yeah, maybe it's emotional. I think a lot of people just don't like to, and I find it perplexing because we get into these different situations where it's a kind of point that I'm using as like a base level point or like a foundational point. Like, you would agree, wouldn't you, that if literally it was choosing between a gun law or nuking all of like the whole world, you would implement the gun law, right? Like, I might say something like that, and I even think, or I'll say something like, you would agree, wouldn't you, that if Jesus told a lie, blah 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 blah, like if it were the case that Donald Trump was correct about the, like, right? So I will set up these to set up a baseline or foundation, and I find that oftentimes people don't even want to grant that, like what I'm setting up specifically to be like mutual understanding, and they won't even grant it, right? So one example of that is when I had the conversation with like not Ron Klain. Oh my God, is it Ron Coleman? Who's the Trump attorney I had a debate with? I was like, would you ever condemn Trump? No, I wouldn't. He's on my side. So, and sometimes when they don't bite the bullet, you're just like, all right, great. You look super unreasonable. But I have had multiple times where I'm talking to someone and I'm specifically setting out like a baseline, like an obvious point, and they think that there's something like sneaky that I'm preparing, that I'm going to build up. So they don't want to grant that premise because they don't want to, like, there's a feeling like I'm trapping them. I'm leading them somewhere, which is sometimes like I have an idea of where I want to go, but sometimes I'm figuring it out in real time and just discovering, you know, the meets and bounds in real time. But I'm just who I am, you know? I can take some pointers here and there. I think part of like if I'm really trying to specifically convince someone, I don't think I would approach it like this at all. I think it would be like, oh, more like interview style. Like, wait, oh, so you think JD Vance has some good points? Yeah, talk to me about that. Are you worried? Like, phrase it more as questions. Because now I think if I were to ever say to Conor, hey, Conor, remember when you said that you would consider voting for JD Vance? Wasn't that stupid, given that JD Vance just like announced this gun buyback program? Weren't you an idiot to trust JD Vance would be better on guns than someone else, right? Like, I don't think he would give ground then. I'm like, no. Like, that's just kind of my way. They don't want to, if I approach it interpersonally from a position of, gotcha, they don't like that. No one likes that. The value add I think I provide is like, I'll let people who are probably sympathetic to my view understand like my view on how to see an issue, and they can, you know, go to town on Twitter or in their interpersonal lives, or just feel more confident when they're walking into these different scenarios that maybe someone's thought about it a little bit.